Blank check with Griffin and David. Blank check with Griffin and David. Don't know what to say or to expect. All you need to know is that the name of the show is Blank Check.
Don't worry, Wilson. I'll do all the podcasting. You just hang on.
Yeah, perfect.
That's
Thank
like
you.
an okay Hanks yell, right? There's that quality in his voice where he's yelling where it's like, come on!
Yeah, you gotta get into like you're like into your solar plexus. You gotta get
Right, it's the buzz!
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I was gonna say it's Midwestern, but he's like a California guy, right? Like he's not
No? He's from Iowa? Is that possible?
Oh,
really? I'm
that's
seeing California
exceedingly
here.
possible for Tom Hanks to be from Iowa.
It does sound right. Maybe he moved. I don't know.
think
No,
he
he's
did.
a California boy, Griff. He's
Really?
California. Concord, California.
Concord,
His
what is that
dad
though?
was-
What's the energy of that place? Because
Yeah,
California's
okay.
very, runs the gamut.
It is big. It seems closer to the Bay Area. It's probably like east of San Francisco. Yeah, okay. Yeah, it's like 30 miles east of San Francisco. I don't know. I'm not a California person. No offense to California. I just like I am an admitted novice in terms of
Are you guys both in New
vibe.
York?
We're both New Yorkers, yes.
Wait a second. But David, I thought you grew up in
London?
England and spent your entire life in England. You didn't grow up in New York. You lived in England exclusively until you
We
were
have
20.
this exciting guest. You're starting this crap like right away.
It's so fast.
Oh
It's-
my god!
we're
Yeah,
going
I lived
fast.
in.
I mean,
New
David, I heard you
York.
got knighted, so that's very exciting.
Hey!
Wow! Yes, the Queen's honors.
OBE?
Well, OBE that's like that's not a knighthood. That's below a knighthood.
Right,
There's
that's
like four
like-
levels.
So I can't call you Sir David?
I mean, you could if you wanted to, but it would be highly
You could.
inaccurate. You know, like there was that brief period where Ben Kingsley apparently insisted on being credited as Sir Ben Kingsley.
Yes.
But that is seen as, I think, largely seen as gauche. Usually you don't want to put it in the title.
The other thing I heard was that he would insist on being referred to as Sir Ben.
Sir
on set.
Ben.
I don't
mean,
know if
I
he's
would.
dropped that, but there was certainly a period, I think,
Yeah.
where he was feeling himself after the knighthood, and he wouldn't let people call him anything other than Sir Ben.
Sir Ben.
Yeah.
I like Sir Ben.
Anyway, I am not Sir David.
I'm looking this up. It says that he was born in Concord, but they moved a lot. And it says
Okay.
this line here, because I remember going
Yes.
over this with Richard.
Yes. By the age
Right.
of 10, they'd lived in 10 houses. Okay.
Oh,
So
right.
they moved all over. His dad was maybe an academic, so
Yes.
maybe that was part of it.
An etymology professor.
Did you guys listen to that I think the Daily episode at the early on in the pandemic? They were trying to give people like some light at the end of the tunnel kind of stuff, like some nice every Friday a good story. And a journalist did a story about her interviewing Tom Hanks, and I think she like started crying
Right.
or something.
Taffy. Yes.
Yeah, and he talks
remember
about his niceness, perhaps coming from the fact that he had to move all the time and adapt and get people to like him. And I thought that was really interesting, and so that completely tracks. Yeah.
That makes sense. That totally
he was like a
makes sense.
career new kid, so
Yeah,
he had
exactly.
to develop a really acceptable geniality. It speaks to his weird all-American quality that like he must have just lived in a bunch of different regions at formative ages in a way that he just sort of crosses over. Because you're right, you're like, what is he? He
Yeah.
doesn't feel like he belongs to any coast.
It's why whenever you see him give an Oscar speech or whatever, you're like, it's kind of crazy. This guy like never ran for president. He just sort of
Yeah,
has
absolutely.
that vibe. That
Yeah.
very. But wait, what were you gonna say?
He's the president of Hollywood, though, I guess.
Right.
He's well, I don't know what I was gonna say. He feels at once like completely general, like,
Mhm.
and at once incredibly specific. Like,
Incredibly specific. He's a
Right.
total, like, he's such a one-off in so many ways, but especially amongst modern movie stars. And I know now he's like an elder statesman, but even if you look at him in the class of like the 80s and the 90s, in terms of the range of what he did and how odd his sort of movie star persona is, because his persona as a public figure is like president of Hollywood, Mr. Nice,
Yeah.
Mr. Professional. But then that isn't necessarily what he plays, like by and large, he doesn't exclusively coast on his charm in that kind of way.
There's a
interesting.
period when he did.
Yeah.
I would say then he kind of swerved away from it. That kind of like Apollo 13, era, the mid 90s era, he was maybe, and this is sort of the end of that a little bit. Maybe.
What does he do right after this?
Because after this, he does Road to Perdition, which is he's playing someone who kills people, even though he's a sympathetic character, right.
And Catch Me If You Can, where he plays the conflict, where he's the annoying character.
Wait, which one was that?
Yeah.
Catch Me If You Can.
Oh, yeah.
Right, where he's the guy who's stopping the movie star from being in a cool movie.
Yeah.
Right. And then after that, the Lady Killers, he definitely, in the 2000s, he's like, well, I shouldn't just play iconic figures of Americana forever. He's definitely, but Castaway is a little bit the hinge point. He goes into the movie, the, friendly sweater wearing guy that we all know and love. And he comes out and he's like, I'm changed, man. I don't know. I don't know what I'm going to do with myself.
But the beginning of the movie, he's literally just yelling at a bunch of Russians.
Buzz! We gotta get these packages, Buzz!
Yeah. It's so, because I remember what you were saying, David, he's so oh my God, Tom Hanks, his warm, lovely, loving self. And then I was rewatching it this morning and I was like, oh yeah, he's just screaming at a bunch of Russian people. He's nice to that kid. But then I remember thinking, I had to Google, what is his job? What is he, does he have to do this? I was so confused.
Did you find anything out? Because I feel like the movie doesn't, except that he works at FedEx.
Right.
Yes.
He's the logistical guy, trying to shave 5 seconds off of everything.
Exactly.
Right.
But I was well, I don't understand why he has to keep flying places. I should preface all this by saying I love Castaway. And I'm also obsessed with the fact that Zemeckis shot an entire film, which is an amazing film, by the way. I could also just talk about that for 7 hours.
Yes.
And then comes back and is a better director and shoots other half this movie. It's crazy.
How many other examples are there of that? It's so crazy.
This is kind of it. I sent you a list of some of the movies that were open when you graciously said you would be willing to appear on this podcast. And you immediately went Castaway because I can't get over the fact that the movie has this one gap and he snuck in a whole nother movie in between.
Yeah, no, I had to. Because What Lies Beneath wasn't available, I think, right? It must not have been. I think. Yeah. I actually, when I was shooting CANDYMAN, my DP and I, John Gulasarian, we sat down and watched What Lies Beneath. Because I had mentioned it for some reason and I was like, no, that movie's actually really good. And I hadn't seen it for a while. I was like, no, that movie's really good and it's really well shot. And he was like, oh no, I watched it the first time 2 weeks ago with my wife because she made me watch it and it's amazing. And then so we watched that and that was weirdly became one of our references for CANDYMAN. And then Castaway I rewatched last summer too. And I was just like,
Same
damn,
DP
this
on
movie.
Both movies. Yeah.
Oh shit. I love that they just travel together. I don't know, man, whatever you're doing, I'll do.
All right, Don, come on.
I think that was a big part of it. I mean, it will have come out by now, but as of the time of this recording, I have not seen What Lies Beneath, and it's one of the few Zemeckis I haven't seen that I've been looking forward to.
It's
very enjoyable.
And it was so underrated when it came out.
Wait, all right, Griffin, introduce our show, introduce our guests, and then let's get back to it.
Oh my God, we didn't introduce the show yet. Dear God.
We never did. We're always terrible at that.
And hey, you're already a great guest because you started talking immediately, which is what we like. The thing that makes us uncomfortable is when we're talking and the guest doesn't know if they should speak, and we're trying to gesture to you can butt in at any time. You immediately
I listened to an episode like that recently, actually.
You took the volleyball and ran with it. This is a podcast called Blank Check with Griffin and David. I'm Griffin.
I'm David.
And it's about filmographies.
Just ignore me.
Perfect. Perfect. It's a podcast about filmographies. Directors who have massive success early on in their career and are given a series of blank checks and make whatever crazy passion projects they want. And sometimes those checks clear, and sometimes they crash. Baby. This is a mini-series on the films of Robert Zemeckis. We've gotten to the namesake of this miniseries, Podcastaway. And our guest today, director of Little Woods, director of the upcoming CANDYMAN, Nia DaCosta. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Thanks for having me. This is so exciting.
This is very exciting.
I love this show.
That is so nice of you to say, and it is the only thing that has made me question your judgment as a director. But
That's weird.
it's a bad opinion. But we were talking right before we started recording because you and I worked together on Vinyl, and that you were an office PA, and I was one of the absolute lowest ranked cast members.
You're one of our esteemed actors. What do you mean?
I mean, I was number 40 on the list of esteemed actors on that show. One of the many problems with that show. Too many characters. Too many
That show was so insane. And I remember, and I have a lot of respect for everyone who made that show, but I remember reading the pilot and just being like, I guess, I mean, we can do this yet again, you know?
Perfectly put. Everything about that show was, I guess, if they think so, right?
Yeah. But it was like the best cast, like the best cinematographers, even the AD, like this guy, like it was so, and for me it was really exciting because it was my first like big like scripted show. I was like doing reality before that. It was really fucking exciting. Actually, one of the reality things I did, you also were involved in, Griffin.
What?
So I mean,
whoa.
I wouldn't call it reality. I call it like, I guess it was like one of those talking head clip shows. It was a pilot that didn't get picked up. 20 versus 30s.
Fuck.
Do you remember this?
Yes. Jesus. Wow.
But I mean, our interaction was very limited. I was like, oh, that's the guy from Trivia, Videology.
Right, so this is what we had to talk about. Right,
This is what we had to talk about because you've been this humongous rising star in the film world. CANDYMAN, everyone's so excited about. I, for one, am particularly excited that the movie is being delayed because I can't wait to see it in a theater. I think that's a great decision. I support it wholeheartedly. But your face was like popping up everywhere. And I had that thing where it's like, if you've worked on enough shoots, you sometimes have a hard time placing, like, I know I've talked to that person, I know I've worked with that person, but I can't remember which set it was on. And then I DM'd you and was like, you worked on Vinyl, right? That was it. And you were like, yeah, I've just started listening to the podcast. This is such a weird coincidence. Asked you to come on the show. Great. But then you revealed right before we started recording that you were a trivia person and that you used to like view David and I with disdain.
Yeah, we used to lament your arrival to trivia. We're like, fuck, we're not gonna win this. We're definitely not. We wouldn't have won anyway, but we just knew if you guys were there, it was going to be a mess for us.
I remember there was one NYU team that was good. Like you guys were heavyweights. That wasn't our team. Okay.
Actually, you know what?
Okay.
Maybe it could have been. I mean, the best trivia teams I'm on is usually when I only know half the team, because the half I know isn't going to be helpful. I'm really bad at trivia, film trivia. Wow. Like I used to be really insecure in film school about not being like well watched enough and whatever. Apparently, it didn't matter. But
it worked out.
I love trivia. It's so fun.
We would bring so many people like to the trivia, just whatever for fun, and they would leave being like, I'm too stressed out. Like I just feel stupid now. Like I get that you guys enjoy that, but it's just hard, and I just sit there being like, well, why don't I know this? Like it was not easy trivia.
It felt like. No, it was really intense, and like every week we would sort of have like 5 of our regulars and maybe 1 open spot, and we would constantly try out different friends of ours, many of whom later become regular guests on this podcast, and they would be like, I get it, I can't do this on a weekly basis. This is too much. And David and I were in the state of like getting there at like 4 p.m. when they opened so that we could have first dibs on the booth. So we camped out there for 4 hours. Like you would show up with your laptop, David, and like write pieces, or I would fucking do whatever. And then we'd be there for another 4 hours doing trivia. Yeah, I would do nothing. But here's the thing, Nia. David and I started going. We've talked about this too many times, but that trivia night is entirely why this podcast exists. It's the reason David and I became such close friends. We had only hung out once before the night that we went to trivia together, and
I love that.
Became obsessed with it. And we're like, we need to center our entire lives around this. And at the beginning, it was just the 2 of us, and we couldn't even place on the charts. And it was this ascension to us being like a team that could break the top 3.
I love it.
The first time we ever came in first place. And like people were excited for us. They was like, oh, the underdogs. And there was the distinct moment after like a year when we won our like third championship in a row and everyone gave us like side eye when David and I looked at each other and we were like, we have to leave. We've become
You have
the
to find
assholes.
somewhere else, yeah.
No, but truly, we were conscious about the exact thing you're describing of like, people hate us now. We're Camp Mohawk. We suck.
No, yeah, it was pretty much, yeah. That's how we felt. We were like, screw that. No, I'm kidding. No, it was very much just like, oh, and like, we weren't going to win anyway, but do you guys do trivia now? Because I was doing like Nighthawk on Zoom for a while.
I heard the Nighthawk one was good. We keep wanting to like host trivia or like have a monthly night or something. I do miss it.
I did one Zoom trivia night and found it difficult, and I don't know if it's just because I'm so
Zoom exhaustion, right?
Zoom exhaustion, but also so like all the my trivia strategies are so specifically built around like conferring in a huddle. And my brain had a hard time adjusting to like being on a team with people in separate cities texting.
Oh, but on Nighthawk you go into a breakout room, so you're all on a screen together. Like
Interesting.
This. Yeah,
I haven't done Nighthawk. That sounds
nice.
good.
It's good. If you guys want to do trivia, maybe we'll win.
Yeah.
This is selfishly for me because I would like to win trivia one day.
Whatever, let's do it. That sounds great.
Love to do it.
I did once win general knowledge trivia, which was crazy.
I like general knowledge trivia too.
Yeah,
I enjoy all Trivial Pursuits.
But
so it's crazy that we never. Well, maybe we did cross paths of videology. Who knows? It was always packed to the gills.
Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah,
it was always so damn sweaty in that room.
Yeah.
Is it still open? It's closed down, right?
It closed down.
Closed.
Crazy.
It's sad.
Yeah.
But here we are. We're going to talk about Castaway. So Zemeckis. So all right. So What Lies Beneath? Is that your favorite Zemeckis, or is that just kind of like the one you kind of speak up for in his, ignoring the big boys?
Name the big boys for me. I have to look at a list of his credits.
You got your Back to the Future, your Roger Rabbit. I mean Gump. Which is.
Agree. I agree with your hand gesture, which I will not describe. I will let you have that hand gesture.
Contact. There are some big Contact fans out there.
Yeah, Contact rules. Of course, the Polar Express, American Masterpiece.
Which one?
Polar Express.
Oh my god, that was terrifying.
Ring-a-ding-ding.
So much of my when I was doing post on CANDYMAN, if we had a CG character or something, I'd be like, listen, this can't be like Polar Express, Beowulf. Like, we can't. We need to figure this out. Also, The Irishman, of course, came up. We're like, we can't do it.
Right. Weird wax people.
Actually, I won't talk about why. That was important. Oh, I probably gave away some plot points, but who cares?
Hey,
I don't know.
Have either of you seen... Someone did, and now I feel like there are a ton of videos like this, but there's one I saw that's really good, where someone just used, like, deepfake technology with old footage of De Niro and redid the Irishman scenes using deepfake technology. It's so much better.
Wow.
It's weird. It's weird how much better it is.
It's weird how much better it is, and the performance is better. Like, not just does it look more like young De Niro, but you're like, oh, this is going to fall apart when he starts emoting and, like, the mouth doesn't sync up or whatever. It totally works.
For me, the biggest problem was the face was a huge problem, but the body just still being old.
Absolutely.
You know?
It was the physical, he couldn't, whatever. He couldn't make it up. And the eyes, the weird blue eyes. Like,
that's the biggest thing for me, though.
Who cares what color his eyes are,
Right, exactly.
Agreed. And also, if you're going to have 3 scenes in which he has to, like, kick a guy, maybe just bring in a young body double for that.
And make sure he actually is kicking the guy and not just an empty part of the pavement.
Right. Like, maybe Bobby can do full body for the dinner scenes or whatever, but let someone else do the kicking.
Yeah.
I still like that movie, though. I need to rewatch that movie.
I enjoyed myself, actually, yeah.
Yeah.
I just remember you seeing it, David, and I was like, the de-aging looks so bad from what I've seen. How is that not a distraction? And you were like, it's bad and it somehow doesn't matter. And that's my whole take on that movie. It's objectively not successful in that regard, and somehow the movie completely makes that kind of irrelevant.
It's because you have so many scenes of Al Pacino eating ice cream that you're like, well...
Solidarity!
Yeah, so good.
I love... Yeah.
Vanilla!
Okay, so what well, Castaway, but is Castaway part of the hook for you? Just that crazy production, side
I
of it.
think so, because my favorite Zemeckis might be. It's hard actually, because after this movie, does he make a good movie? Oh, I can't talk like this about people.
Hey, I think he does, but he never
Which one is
has
it?
a sort of widely accepted slam dunk. I feel like this is his last movie that most of the public liked, that was well reviewed and was a hit.
I mean, you stick up for Allied, Griffin.
I love Allied.
Oh,
But I mean, he certainly does not make a movie that is, I would say, critically respected.
yeah.
People like Flight,
which is pretty brutal.
I
Flight
like
is the
Flight
closest.
less than Allied. Flight was
You know,
close.
I like Flight more than Allied, but I love plane crashes in movies a lot.
Okay, so I'm terrified of plane crashes, and I'm terrified of plane crashes in real life.
Me too.
You're terrified
So-
of planes, period.
Yeah, me
Well,
too.
right. Yes.
I'm a nervous
okay.
flyer,
High
but I
five.
love
I'm
the scenes.
Well, I mean, so I have that where I'm like, it's the thing I fear most. So, right. So watching it is super, super thrilling. But I have never seen Flight because I know that it has an intense plane crash. And I am this movie also has a very intense plane crash.
Yeah,
Obviously.
I
But
love it. Oh.
This one I love. I mean, this one really, this is a good time for me to be watching movies with plane crashes because I'm not getting on a
Going
plane
into it, yeah.
anytime soon.
Yeah.
So I might, so I'm actually kind of excited for Flight. I've long avoided it for that very reason.
Honestly, Flight is like very by the numbers, very predictable, and like also weirdly satisfying. I think when it came out, and this is how I feel also about What Lies Beneath, because I feel like if What Lies Beneath came out this year, well, not this, last year, we'll say.
Sure. A normal year.
It would have been like, wow, how great. This is really exciting. Like, what a great movie. It came out sort of at a time when lots of these kinds of movies I feel like were getting made, but lesser versions of them. So it was hard to like, pick them out. Whereas like Flight, I feel like if it came out when fucking What Lies Beneath came out, people would be like, oh wow, look at that. I don't know.
I mean, Castaway is a particularly wild movie to watch in that kind of way. But I do feel like, I mean, I'm looking forward to rewatching Flight. My memory of it is I was so amped for it, primarily because, like, Zemeckis finally put down the fucking mocap shit and is making a live-action adult movie
working with a huge
again.
movie star again. Right, yeah, totally.
Right. And then the concept in the trailer just seemed like, this is interesting, kind of like morally gray material. And then I felt kind of disappointed when the movie becomes, as you said, a lot more kind of conventional by the numbers after maybe the first 30 or 40 minutes.
Yeah, 100%.
But the plane crash is incredible. And I feel like Zemeckis is very much a filmmaker where there's like clearly a hook to each movie that is what got him excited about making it. Whether it's a story hook or it's like a sort of
technical thing, right?
A technical thing, a structural thing. I mean, it really feels like for him, the hook on this was A, how do you make a movie where you have that little dialogue, you have that much isolation, that much silence for that long? And B, I just think he probably fucking geeked out at the idea of I could shoot half a movie, wait a year, and then shoot the second half.
Insane,
no one gets to do that. It feels like that was the whole appeal to him.
Yeah.
That just he and Hanks at this point, individually, but especially the idea of the Forrest Gump guys are reteaming, could go into a studio and say, like, here's what we're going to do. And they had to say yes.
What did Tom do in that, besides lose weight and grow that crazy beard? Was he just not doing anything in that time?
Correct.
Yeah, it's a good
Tom
point.
Hanks,
Did he make
America's
any other
biggest movie
movies?
star, just kind of sat on the bench for like a year.
Wow.
Right, because the movie before this is The Green Mile. And then, he doesn't make a movie again for 2 years till Road to Perdition and 02. So, he really did throw everything into this, basically. And it was a huge hit, and he got an Oscar nomination, and you know what I mean? Like, it was not a bad idea.
What did he win for? Philadelphia, Gump?
And Gump.
Philadelphia and Gump back to back.
Back to back. And then the wilder thing is, it's like he has the big nomination. Then Philadelphia and Gump back-to-back wins. Then he gets nominated for Apollo 13, Saving Private Ryan, Castaway. And then this is his last nomination for 20 years. He did not get nominated once.
And then it's that Mr. Wilson's
Mr.
World.
Rogers.
Mr. Rogers.
Right. All the movies he didn't get nominated for are it's a bananas list.
Interesting, yeah. Wow.
No Captain Phillips, no Bridge of Spies.
He's really good in Captain Phillips. Like,
He's
against,
fucking rules in Captain
I don't enjoy how much I liked Captain Phillips. Like,
it's
I really don't enjoy.
I mean, one reason you liked it so much though is because of how incredibly good he is.
He's so good. The two leads, him and Barkhad Abdi was like
is unbelievable. in that movie.
such a great. You know what's funny? I mean, I shouldn't talk about Peter Berg right now because we're talking about Robert Zemeckis. But there are certain directors where
Always time for Berg.
you're like, it doesn't really matter if your movie's bad. Like, I just will enjoy it because I like the way you do the thing. And weirdly, Peter Berg is that for me, which seems crazy, like, to say out loud.
Nia does not seem crazy at all. I think Peter Berg is a great example of that. Like, even when I dislike his movies, I like his movies.
Yeah. He just has a way about him that they all vibrate on the same frequency. So you're just like, yeah, this is working because it is what it is.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
We went
the
to
post.
go
I'm just looking at Hanks movies. Sully, obviously, stuff for
Right.
Sully, stuff for just movies that Oscar would go for.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sully
and he
was
just
hard to look at.
interesting.
But also
This
another
is-
good plane crash.
Sure, this is America's #1 Sully podcast. You're
love Sully.
entitled to your opinion. You just need to know that we simp for Sully. That we're Sully bootlickers.
Do you really like
it's
Sully,
just-
actually?
Oh, we love Sully to the degree that people think it's a bit. People
A joke,
think it
yeah,
is
I thought it
a
was a bit.
multi-year bit. Once every 6 months, there will be a thread on the Blank Check Reddit, which is, can someone explain the Sully bit to me?
Right, and it's then
Because
people
no one
just
believes
replying.
we like it this
Fascinating.
much. Yeah,
People
That's
just
interesting.
replying with like he saved
Yeah.
155 souls. Like I don't
right.
know
Brace
what
for
do you mean
impact.
by
There was a
bit?
forced water landing. You want to make it
Right,
human.
right.
Wait, who shot
Yeah.
Sully?
Who shot Sully? I think it was probably Eastwood's guy, but let me double check. Oh yeah, Tom Stern, which shoots all. Oh, yeah, I know what you mean. That's sort of like very grayed out look of all those Eastwood films.
Also, every
Like-
light
yeah.
that is available is on in every room.
Yes.
That's what I remember. I was
Right.
like, what on earth is going on?
He does the weird, like, desaturated with fluorescent lighting
Yeah,
palette.
it's like, what?
Which
Yeah.
a lot of it feels to me like his whole I don't want to waste time on setups. I only want to do 2 takes. Like, just set it up.
Honestly, yeah. I've heard some funny stories about that, which I will not share. But
I mean, even
At least
Tom
I'll tell you.
Hanks, I
Maybe
feel
I'll tell
like,
you after.
has talked about Clint Eastwood's rapid style of directing.
what do they work on together?
Sully.
Sully!
Oh, I literally
Brace for
am just like
impact!
off. I know. Seriously, sorry, my bad. Oh my god.
I think
like,
that's the only one. That's their only.
that's the only
That's
one.
it.
That's why my brain
That is
blanked out. I was
their
like, I
only
can't think of another
collaboration.
film. No, yeah.
Hanks, some interview he did talking about working with Clint Eastwood, he said that he doesn't say action or cut. Like, everyone's just sort of set, people call places, and then he's just sort of sitting there, and then Hanks looks over to him, waiting for him to say action, and then Eastwood just kind of goes like, well... Like, he just sort of throws his hand out and
I
says,
believe
like,
he says,
well.
"Go ahead." I think
Go
that's the
ahead.
story. Go
And
ahead.
then
really
at the
funny.
end of the scene, there's just silence, and then he goes like, that's enough of that.
That's,
And he asked him,
Yeah.
like, that seems like the most passive way to direct a movie. And apparently it's because of all his time working with horses that when people would yell action or cut, horses would get startled and it would fuck up scenes.
wow, that's so funny.
Yeah.
Do you remember
Go
that
ahead.
time? And then I swear I'll keep this on track. But like but I feel like when like everyone was talking about like lady directors are being ladies in directing, and I feel like so many women were interviewed, and it was like, how do you run your set? And like a couple were like, I don't say action. It's just very masculine and so like, aggressive.
Yeah.
And I just say like, let the spirits take you or whatever. And it was such a big deal made out of this. And I remember just thinking like, you found like the 2 female directors who resist this. And now it feels like
Sure.
every woman this, like floats onto set and says, whatever your heart wants to do. I was just like, it was so weird. And maybe they were just all talking about Clint Eastwood. I don't know, but
I don't know why you would make movies if you didn't want to shout action. I mean, people can do what they want, but like to me, that seems
also,
like
we don't even
the
we don't
biggest
say
thrill.
action. The AD does.
Right,
like-
sure, right. You don't even do that. That
I mean,
would be.
I like to sometimes if I don't like my AD, but no, just kidding.
But also, why direct movies if you can't talk through like an analog megaphone and wear
Exactly.
the little like postboy cap backwards?
Exactly. That's exactly what I do.
I have this question for you because you were very much like a rapidly rising female director in the industry, which means, you get discussed within that prism. Like, what is it like to be a female director? How is it different? Do you feel like, I wonder, you talk about something like that, right? That piece. And I've been lucky to work with like almost 50% female directors.
Oh, dope.
Just by total chance. It's not like I have any hiring power over the things where I'm number 27 on the call sheet, but also doing a lot of TV where more female directors work and have worked for the last 15 years than features, unfortunately. Yeah. And I don't feel like there are a lot of seismic changes in that kind of way, like differences. Yeah. Do you feel like if Variety is writing a piece like that on like what is it like to be a female director, they are pointedly seeking out directors who they think represent a different female way of directing, quote unquote?
I feel like sometimes here's what I think can happen, right? It's like you can say like, here's what it's like to be a female director, and then interview like Miranda July and like what's her face from Transparent, or what's their face, I should say, because they don't. Jill Soloway. Jill Soloway no longer is.
Yeah, what's their face?
She's non-binary now. And like they are very specific type of director, unrelated to them being at the time, both of them at least, femmes. You know what I mean? So it's like it's a bit like if you interviewed like Patty Jenkins and myself and Ava DuVernay and I don't know, like Lulu Wang, like we'd all have pretty different ways because we just make different kinds of movies. But I feel like at the time it felt so much like, okay, we're going to talk about how women don't direct horror films or action films, but only talk to women who absolutely want to do those things.
Sure.
Okay, but then there are women who don't. But like, I don't know. I think people do kind of pick and choose in ways. But also now that there's so many of us. And so many of us still being like 1%, but still better than 0.5. It's kind of harder to like do that pigeonholing thing.
It's also that thing of just like, I'm sure if you went on a Harmony Korine set, he would do a bunch of weird shit differently than most directors.
I wouldn't find myself on that set ever. You couldn't pay me to go to a Harmony Korine set.
You don't like bacon taped to walls?
I can't even watch Kids. I haven't watched Kids. I started it and I was like, absolutely not. I can't do it.
We should mention, because Harmony Korine has come up on the podcast and producer Ben has not said anything, which is unconventional for this show. But the reason why is Ben was unable to sit in for this recording. He did bring in a backup producer. It's Wilson Volleyball. And this is not a bit that I am doing. This is a real thing where Ben charged to the blank check business account the purchase of a official Castaway Wilson Volleyball with the face printed on it, and he has placed it in front of his laptop on Zoom. In our Zoom window, there is a Wilson Volleyball in front of a virtual background of an island, and Ben is just going to leave his computer open like this for 2 hours. So
yes, he is. There's some nice sunlight on Wilson's face right now, actually.
Yeah, it's feeling very integrated, this whole setup.
He looks lovely. Yeah.
But yes, okay.
Well, I was just going to say, no one would try to frame any of the weird shit Harmony Korine does as emblematic of male directors, which is the point you're making.
Right.
But Robert Zemeckis, in many ways, a very traditional director, like very much like a guy who's part of the institution, grows up on like popular culture, is part of that like Spielberg generation of TV kids who become like the populist blockbuster guys. But he does all these weird little experiments within his very mainstream films. And this movie comes about because Hanks births the idea. He said that he read somewhere about how many flights it takes for FedEx to maintain their service. And they have so many planes with so few people on them, mostly carrying packages, going over large sort of unmanned seas every day. And so then he had the thought of like, what would it be like if one of those planes went down rather than a commercial airline where, there's a much larger search, a much larger number of people, lost at sea. So then he went to Zemeckis with it, and I think Zemeckis latched on to they were, as TV kids, gelling on the idea of like, we grew up with this shit like Gilligan's Island, and to a lesser extent, like all the Robinson Crusoe adaptations, where people are able to suddenly build like this incredible fort, coconut radios, and all this shit. Like no one's made a movie about what it would actually be like to sort of survive on an island for that long, and like relished in the isolation and the silence and how menial the sort of learning curve would be for everything. And so they get onto that idea, I think pitch the movie, everyone wants it, hire, what's his name, who's like just the ultimate 90s studio screenwriter at this point.
William Broyles, right? He wrote Apollo 13. He wrote Entrapment. What if there was an entrapment? What else?
Created
he wrote the Polar
China Beach?
Did he? Yes, he did. He created China Beach, the TV series. Yes. But like, come on, Entrapment. Like, what if
Entrapment.
a 70-something jewel thief teamed up with a 20-something jewel thief? Right? I can't remember.
Yeah.
Maybe
It's
they're
truly
art
confounding
thieves.
that film in that way. I remember being really young watching it, and I love the movie, but I remember being like, he is so old.
He's very old.
And what universe? Although I guess her universe, because she's literally married to someone 20 years older than her. But
That is true. She did that. Right.
Sure.
But I don't think they have sex. I can't remember. I saw the movie in theaters, and I remember that there's a crucial set piece takes place because he unplugs a laptop too quickly and it sets off an alarm. That's the era Entrapment came out in. Anyway. But yes, that's who William Broyles comes in. I believe he was in the army, like, that's it. So he like whatever. He's writing the movie. What else, Griff? I mean, I guess he like scouts like FedEx, right? Like figures out how that all works. They get them on board.
Right, but I think another big part of it was like Zemeckis and a bunch of crew members. I don't know if this is once they had started filming or if this was a sort of prior thing, but actually spent time on an island so they could learn firsthand, like, oh, what are the challenges? What are the things you would try to solve? So started constructing the sort of narrative around that. And I know the Wilson dialogue was fully written. Like, Broyles wrote out full back and forth dialogue scenes between him and Wilson, so Tom Hanks knew exactly what the responses were in his head to play off of it. But yeah, then they do this totally bananas thing where I guess DreamWorks and Fox, were they the two studios on What Lies Beneath as well?
Yes, they were, and in fact, it's like this was a Fox movie that DreamWorks took internationally, and What Lies Beneath was a DreamWorks movie that Fox took internationally. So you bet they worked out some whole fucking deal.
That was part of, I think, the whole pitch was like, he liked the idea, I think, in just a sort of competitive sportsmanship kind of way of like, could I make an entire movie within a movie? Could I have the opportunity to make a movie with this sort of like production gap? Got DreamWorks and Fox on board with like, I'll give you 2 big movie star films within the same year. And then the other thing was having What Lies Beneath in between allowed him to retain all of his key crew. Because otherwise it was oh, I'd shoot with people and then a year later I can't tell them to just stay on hold. So he was able to promise people, I'll give you a whole movie in between. Here'll be an 8-month shoot. Here are the outside dates for the next 18 months of your life.
Crazy.
Yeah.
But they made 2 like $300 million hits out of that. Like they made back-to-back smash hit.
He had 2 of the top 10 films of 2000.
Right, both original movies. I mean, both obviously based in, like, What Lies Beneath is sort of a Hitchcock thriller, haunted house movie. Castaway is a deserted island movie. But, like, 2 just whole cloth original. It's like you say, Neil, like, if this came out now, people would be like, this is the best shit I've ever seen. I didn't realize Hollywood still made these.
Both films, because I think it's because we have so much saturation of IP stuff. But it's like people, like when a big original film comes out, whether it's big in terms of like, if it's like a drama or a thriller, like What Lies Beneath, like mid-budget, or like a high budget like film like Castaway, like you're like, oh shit, like people are still thinking with their brains and doing new things, and they're also both really well made. So
they are.
Yeah.
There's also just something to how sparse the pitch is for this movie. There's something exciting about just like Zemeckis and Hanks had so much trust that they were like, here's the movie. He gets trapped on an island and the bulk of the movie is him just learning a series of skills.
I was
in
shocked
silence.
actually when I was watching it and I was like, he got to the island. I was like, oh, how much time has passed? And the movie's like 2 hours and 20 minutes.
It's a long movie.
And I was like, oh, only 20 minutes has passed and I'm supposed to be here for 2 more hours. And the movie doesn't feel long to me at all. So it was like, it's so good. Like the pacing is so good. And like, you know, knocking out his tooth and then 4 years later and you're just like, what? Like,
It's so good. It's one, as you say, like the movie is really long and doesn't feel it at all. It has big bookends, like, you know, like substantial bookends that don't feel, to me at least, like superfluous. And it's really, the island action is really just 2 days. Like, it's like kind of his first night there and kind of his last night there. Like, you know, it sort of asks you to imagine everything in between. And like, it's kind of not hard to do.
Yeah.
It's wild. David is taking off his Atlantic sweatshirt. Shit is getting real. The Hot David 2020.
I'm going to be next because it's really hot in this closet.
It's a stunningly confident movie in that, like, we're going to dole things out so patiently. We're going to give you so little, and we are confident that the audience will remain engrossed in this. And the filmmaking is not flashy. Like, he's not doing sort of Danny Boyle, like, I'm using all this sort of extreme cinematic language in order to make the sort of subjective experience of this guy being trapped here. It's very sort of like lockdown, little scene fragments, watching gradual progression of things.
Can we talk about, actually, in the filmmaking and the simplicity of it, like, how some of these VFX shots like, did not age well at all?
Please.
The whole movie is day for night.
Yeah,
And
so I'm like staring at it like this feels bad, like not bad, but like wrong to my eye.
that is absolutely the stuff that works the least. They just, because they didn't want artificial lighting and it would have been too dark to get any proper image on film. They shot all the night scenes during the day and then digitally darkened them and painted out the sky. And the sky looks the worst.
Yeah,
and
it looks crazy.
But
somehow you're still in.
Sometimes the water looks really weird, right?
Yeah,
like the clouds in the water.
Mm-hmm.
Right, right.
Yeah, it's pretty disturbing at times. Like I remember I was watching like his first night especially. You're like, what? Because it feels almost like my eyes are bad. Like my eyes can't focus. Like when I was watching it. It's so weird.
It looks like a weird Instagram filter. It just has that unnatural quality to it. They also, almost the entire movie is ADR'd. Because like everything on the island, they said the waves were just too loud. Yeah. So pretty much like every line of dialogue, every piece of sound. Yeah, it's like all Foley, all ADR.
It's like
they shot
All Is
it.
Lost.
Yeah,
yeah. Is All Lost though? Sorry. There's a very famous, notorious press screening or whatever of All Is Lost where someone got up and asked a question that went on for 5 minutes, and at the end they were like, what's your question though? And he was like, I guess my question is all lost? Like,
oh my god.
Anyway, it's always held up by film critics as the worst Q&A question ever asked.
I love that so much. Because there's a lot of bad ones.
Yeah.
Yes. But they shot it in Fiji, right? On like maybe not, an uninhabited island in Fiji. Which that must have been crazy. My God, I'm looking at it now. It has iguanas. This looks cool.
I was wondering what natural predators might be on that island. I was like, are there boars? Like,
well, you see, this is the thing. I also there's no way that Lost. I don't know if you were a Lost watcher.
I was initially,
But, like, there's no way Lost isn't just... The initial germ of it was someone watching Castaway and being like, right, we're just going to do this, right? And Lost has boars. And I kept confusing plot points with Lost and this. I kept being like, right, does he, like, hunt animals? No, I guess he doesn't. Like, I guess there's nothing going on.
And those crabs.
Just gets his fish.
Yeah.
How quickly would you guys... I would die immediately. I was having this argument with my wife, but like, I was just like, no, I can't do the fishing. I don't think I'd make it. Yeah. I don't think I'd last like 5 nights.
And I'm alone?
Yeah.
It's very
in his exact circumstances.
You can use all the FedEx crap, right? You can like hopefully take advantage of some like choice packages, but that's it.
Oh man. Maybe it's me being too generous to myself, but I think I'd live for a little bit.
I mean,
I don't think I would have ever here's what would not happen. I would not have gotten off that island.
no, there's no way you
never.
leave. Right.
Engineering a raft, going over those waves, unless I was like, I'm ready to die and I might as well try, you know?
Sure.
Right. No, but I would be so scared, not just of going over the waves, but like, then what? Like where?
Exactly. Yeah. Well, I guess he knows that there's a boat, there's a shipping lane out there.
Right. He saw a boat.
But it's very far. But yeah, my thing would be like, I'm ready to die. I'm ready to kill myself. I will at least attempt to escape. And then
Sure.
Yeah.
I just feel like, I mean, I say this a lot as a joke, but it's also not a joke. I feel like my very continued existence is proof that we as a species have overcome survival of the fittest. Like, I am someone who is not supposed to survive the elements in terms of how I am built. So I just feel like I would accidentally die very quickly.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Infection, trip and fall.
You'd be like, oh, let me get that stick. That seems helpful. Right. And then you cut your foot and then that's it.
Yeah.
Right. I also think I'd be too cowardly and disorganized to figure out a way to even like build a raft. So I would just be complacent and be like, cool, this is where I live for the rest of my life. And then I think something would accidentally kill me within 48 hours. Right. That's my guess.
I feel that.
But it's crucial that he is he's a problem solver, right?
Yeah.
That's why we have that opening bookend.
Yeah.
And because otherwise we don't buy probably that he figures shit out on this island.
Right. Yeah. There are two moments I really love. One for just the practical sense of it, like when he's trying to open the coconut and he smashes the rock and then that shard comes out. I was like thinking about the rock. I was like, how do they do that? And then the cut to 4 years later and the spear and the
it's so good.
It tilts up and he's just like one hip jutted out like in his loincloth. And his hands just coming down slowly.
It's also just like the guy is like having as dominant a run as a movie star has ever had. For him to look that radically transformed that deep into a movie when he is like America's favorite, it's just so fucking striking. Yeah. Like, not just that he's that skinny, the hair, the beard, but as you said, just the physicality. Like, he's moving in a way different than he's ever moved in his life up until that point.
It's the best magic trick of the movie. Like, it's the kind of thing, like, the whatever Boyhood, like movies like that just do weird time shit, like, it's just, there's nothing like cutting to him looking like that, and you just immediately knowing, like, well, this can't be fake. Like, I guess he just lost all this weight or whatever. Like it just gets you. I mean, do we want to go? This is not a plotty movie. Like, it's tough to sort of like go through.
We can sort of go in order.
The open.
Let's talk about
the plane
Hunt.
crash.
Nia, I think you made a very good point, which is it feels like most people's version of this movie would be an hour before he gets on the plane. They would be like, you really need to spend a lot of time with the guy and know what he's losing and be invested before he's stranded. And this movie is like 20 minutes until the plane crashes. It moves so fast. It's unconventional that of the bookends, the coda is longer than the prologue, so to speak. It feels like most people would do the opposite and would not have the confidence to have a solid, 90 minutes plus on the island. But the opening is just sort of so fast.
It's so good. And it's just what, like the shot where he goes to her office and she's at the photocopier and he's just like looking at her. And then the way Helen Hunt like just performs that meeting, like she turns around and she's like sort of like tired and she's like stretching. And then like, it just feels so real. And you're like, oh, these are real fucking people. Like, I think this movie, and they're adults.
About grown-ass people.
Yeah, exactly.
We talk a lot on this podcast about Tom Hanks movies being about a guy who's good at his job. That's the main thing that unifies most of his films, and that Tom Hanks is great at his job of playing people who are good at their job. But it's like right away, that's the number one thing the movie wants to establish. This is a guy who's a problem solver, thinks through everything, knows all the variables. And it's fun that you have the, getting to see the package travel with the little kid and everything. But also, I totally forgot that the cold open of the movie is the woman, Bettina.
Yes.
And her
shop.
philandering husband.
Her philandering husband, who you never see. And her weird business, iron-wielding wings.
No idea. I also forgot that. I knew that she had a cheating husband, but I forgot that like the wings was like that motif throughout.
Right. It's like his weird little religious icon that he fixates on. Yeah. She's like an industrial artist. That's what I took away from it, right? Like she's just out there in Texas making cool shit out of metal.
What's her husband doing in Russia? I remember thinking that. I was like, what's he doing there? And because it's so awkward when the package gets there and he's like, it's from my wife, and then goes inside. I was like, what? It's so awkward, but I kind of love it.
I love it too. Yes. And I love Helen Hunt. I mean, this is Helen Hunt's year. We've talked about What Women Want, which also came out this year. She also does Pay It Forward, which is obviously not a big movie. I mean, not a hit, but like she won the Oscar 3 years ago. Her sitcom has wrapped up. And she's just in 4 movies this year. She's just like kind of everywhere.
Wow.
Mad About You had ended, and she was finally able to do movies again post-Oscar, and all of them came out like within a 6-month period.
What's she win an Oscar for again?
As Good as It Gets. The James.
Oh my God! Of course, I love that. I love that her son in that movie has the disease that all kids have in movies, which is unspecified.
Yeah,
he just coughs. He just coughs a lot. He's got a real coughing problem. I love her in that movie. I mean, I have such a crush on Helen Hunt in all movies.
But she's amazing.
She's amazing. It's honestly a good run. Like, I feel like she got kind of a bad rap for a while because she won an Oscar and that, like, whatever, puts a target on your back. But like, if you go like Twister through to this, like, that's she makes a lot of fun movies.
Yeah.
I think there was a backlash at this point, and it was a little bit of the Jude Law syndrome, where it's just like, for 4 months, she was in every movie. Like, it was like September, October, November, December, she had like 4 big movies, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, yes, yeah. I mean, you're right. I think you're right.
Wait,
it's the Jude Law
Jude Law thing, though? Was that really, like, did anyone care except for Chris Rock, and then he made it a big deal? You know what I mean?
I mean, I don't think anyone was mad at Jude Law per se, but I do think it's not like, because if Jude Law had made 4 great movies in 1 year or whatever, then everyone would be like, it was just that there was suddenly a lot of Jude Law in like okay movies. I mean,
it was
some
Alfie,
of them are good.
Closer, Lemony Snicket, where he's pretty much only voiceover, Aviator, where he's a little bit more than a cameo, and then Sky Captain: The World of Tomorrow,
and I Heart Huckabees.
One more. Oh,
it's
and I Heart
6
Huckabees.
movies.
Right, 6. That
He's
was
great
the thing.
in I Heart Huckabees, though.
It's
a lot of movies
between September and December. I feel like David and I were both nerds who were spending a lot of time on like Oscar prediction message boards in high school, and it was very much a thing that people were doing jokes about. It feels like it was noted, but I don't think anyone was like, ugh. And then Chris Rock crystallized it, and weirdly, then the Sean Penn reaction did more damage than anything.
Yeah, everyone was like, shut up, Sean Penn. We're allowed to not like Jude Law. Jude Law probably was just like, leave me alone.
Yeah, he's just like, I'm just here at the ceremony. I remember watching that as, I don't know how old I was whenever that happened. And I remember being like, feeling so awkward for Chris Rock. Not for Chris Rock, but just for everyone Chris Rock was talking about. Because it felt so personal, because I couldn't really identify with his emotion. Also because he wasn't like, oh, isn't that Jude Law and everything? He literally was like, if you can't get a star, like, don't get Jude Law, get a star. I was like, damn.
Right. His whole bit was like Jude Law is dollar store Russell Crowe or whatever, which was, it was a somewhat aggressive way to frame it.
It was so awkward. I honestly, I don't like either time that Chris Rock has hosted the Oscars. But I think I love his Chris Rock stand-up. I think he's a fucking genius at it. But both times I was just like, I don't know what we're doing here together, Chris.
I think it's one of those things where, like, the years leading up to that, people were like, why don't they just get Chris Rock to host the Oscars? Yeah. He seems like he'd be great for it. He did it. No one was super happy with it. Everyone forgot that he hosted. And then 5 years later, people were like, why don't they just get Chris Rock to host the Oscars? He seems like he'd be good at it. And it's like, he did it before. And it's like, no, I remember that. We should let him do it again.
Yeah.
And then the same thing happened.
Yeah. Oh,
Second time I remember being more underwhelming. I don't mind the first Rock host. My mom was the hugest fan of it. She every year after Chris Rock was just like, they should bring Chris Rock back. I don't know why I'm looking at this guy right now. So maybe that colored my opinion.
Yeah.
It's such a weird job because people don't want a host who's too fawning, but they also don't want someone who's too critical. And like he's a little bit too cutting. And, you know, Neil Patrick Harris is the opposite direction where it's just doing a magic trick on stage.
Who was a good host, like, recently? Billy Crystal lost points for blackface, but...
Absolutely.
He certainly did.
And also...
When everyone was like, he's back, the legend is back, and he like opened with blackface, and it was like, oh boy, can we?
I was like, did no one say,
away?
hey, maybe not?
Absolutely. And Tintin Face. I don't want to rank
the faces.
The issues here, but Tintin Face was also an issue.
It's something that we don't talk about enough.
Absolutely.
Look, I know that she has recently been discussed quite a lot and has been
about to agree
criticized
with
very
what you
fairly.
say.
But I do, you know, Ellen DeGeneres' two performances
I think Ellen was
remember
the best
being
modern Oscar
pretty
host.
solid.
I
think
did a great
Steve
job.
Martin is the best modern Oscar host. I guess what are we calling modern anymore?
That's my point.
Ellen,
Steve Martin has now been long enough that I wouldn't call him modern. Ellen was the best of anyone in the last 20 years.
Because she kind of tapped into like what people actually want to watch the Oscars for, which is like the excitement of like, we like movies a lot actually, and like the excitement of the people who might win them. And I remember that little video she did in the beginning with everyone sort of like woo, and like Jennifer Hudson was like, "Don't I look good, y'all?" or something. I don't know. I just remember being like, "Oh, this is fun!" Like, and now everything after that I've kind of hated.
I think she struck the right balance, and I think there's also that thing. I remember someone saying about Billy Crystal in the years after Billy Crystal, when everyone was like, "Bring Billy back," and then Billy came back and made us all rue the day we wish for that. But in the years, I remember people analyzing why Billy Crystal was so much more successful than other people, and they said like because he was at just the right level of like being a Hollywood insider while also being like a comedian and having like a little bit objectivity.
Yeah.
But there's something about like if someone feels too far removed from that world, you're like, I don't know. Like, should Seth MacFarlane be making jokes about nude scenes, you know?
That was so disgusting. I was like, how dare you?
Opened
it is
the show.
crazy. It is
And, like,
crazy that happened.
And like, I like, of course, he got like his like Jennifer Lawrence and Charlize Theron to be like, we're in on it, hee hee. But it's like you shouldn't have to be in on someone literally talking about your Pornhub scenes. Like, it's crazy.
Right.
Like, anyway.
Someone recently like texted me being like, I'm not like misremembering this, right? Like that happened like in
It's like
this
as bad as I
decade,
remember,
like
right? Yeah.
Yeah, it was disgusting. I was like, this is a crazy world. Maybe if this is the standard, don't know if I'm going to be able to direct a film. It's time to deal with these bobos.
Right.
Seth MacFarlane's Oscar hosting performance almost made you quit
this industry.
So the Castaway's amazing.
Castaway's amazing. We do enjoy it. It's got a great plane crash. Wait, what were you going to say, Griff?
No. Just the opening setup stuff. I feel like the dinner scene with the family is so good. I mean, because you have him showing up to see her at work. There's really good, just like two movie stars, two good actors who are able to convey an entire history of a relationship in like their body language very instantly, as you said, Nia, just like the way she turns around, the way they look at each other.
She's just like, she's just exactly the kind of person you would want to stay alive for, as corny as that sounds. You know, and if she was like, whatever, you know, like not like she's the perfect sort of like, she just feels like a real person. She's the most like famous and charming type of person who you're still like, well, this is a real person.
Yeah. It's funny. I remember like as a kid, you know, I was 11 when this movie came out and when Helen Hunt was having her sort of like banner year. And I remember like feeling that this movie like totally fell off a cliff when he gets back to land and sees her again. And I remember feeling similarly about What Women Want when she enters the movie. And like What Women Want, 100% 180. I think everything before she enters is intolerable. The movie becomes somewhat good once she kind of takes control of the narrative. And her stuff for me in this works a lot better. But I do feel like there was that weird resentment of like, all these movies where like Helen Hunt comes in and reality comes crashing back into these like sort of fantastical premises.
That's so funny.
I think that was a common hit on this movie. Like, it's so good, but it's the island stuff is what's good. Yeah. And rewatching it, I'm like, I don't think the island stuff is enough. Like, obviously, it's very impressive and it's very involving, you know, like, and maybe there's just that sort of like cinematic like endurance thing where it's like, how long can you make a movie with no dialogue, with just, you know, him talking to a volleyball? Like, people are just sort of into that. Sort of like the critique of like Wall-E or whatever. Like, you know, come on, make the whole movie just him cleaning up garbage. Like,
which is so
like,
annoying because the reason why you like it is because you got just enough of it, not because you need to have the whole fucking movie be that. Like,
that's exactly right. They don't know. They wouldn't want a full course of that. Yes.
That's also, for me, the brilliance of this movie is just like his sense of balance is so correct in all the island stuff. Not just how much of it there is in totality, but also just when the time jump happens, how long each scene is. Like, it essentially is scene fragments for 90 minutes. You're just getting these little pieces with these jumps, whether it's a short jump of just the progression of a fire or a slightly longer jump of him moving to an entirely different task. Like, when Lady Bird came out and there was the inevitable, like, second wave backlash to how beloved Lady Bird was, and I remember a lot of people, like, were throwing out the, like, well, how hard is it to direct this movie? Like, it's silly that we're putting this up for Oscars. It's like a high school comedy. It's not that hard to direct. And which is stupid. But I remember the best rebuttal I read to it. I think, now I'm trying to remember who it was who wrote this, but just sort of explained, like, it is not sort of like bravura, you know, sort of like technically complicated filmmaking that is usually lauded, but it is deceptively difficult to make a film like Lady Bird where most scenes are 30 seconds long. Like, that's another movie where it's a year of her life and it takes all these jumps. And the difficulty of that is you're sort of doing, like, all filmmaking is pointillism, but it's super extreme pointillism where you're like, these scenes don't really have coverage. There's no way to edit those fragments internally. It's all about having the right judgment of what angle are you at and what is the length of the action of Tom Hanks using the rock to try to break the coconut.
Yeah.
How do you direct that performance? How does the actor have the right judgment? How does the director cover it the right way? And then how do you edit that properly? How much or how little do you want of each of those things? And it is just like these very small puzzle pieces that build really, really well.
Yeah. My favorite little vignette is him in the fire. He's like, I made the and I'm like,
I have made fire.
Exactly. It's just like such Tom Hanks-ishness, but it's also that thing that makes the movie work so well. It's because, like, you want to watch him do this.
You want Tom Hanks to come back too.
Yeah. It's also, I think, why, like, a movie like, this is so off base, not off base, but it's off topic, but a movie like You've Got Mail works when, like, you should really hate him so much.
Totally.
Because he like ruins this woman's life, and then it's like, in exchange, I give you myself. But I love that movie, and I think it's because you just Tom Hanks has this thing about him where you want to watch him. He just works. I don't know.
It's that ineffable movie star thing. I mean, like, Road to Perdition, his next movie after this is just like, this guy is a murderer. And I disagree with this, but the complaint that some people have about that movie is he's too likable. I can't accept him as being dangerous, even though you see him kill people. He just has that fucking thing. But I also feel like it's such a good study in the power of withholding stuff from the audience. When you go that long without him having dialogue, and also you've watched so much of Tom Hanks sort of being a husk of himself, being so silent and so defeated and so stressed out and scared and angry and sad. When you get a classic sort of Tom Hanksy scene of him dancing around a fire and being funny and charming, it feels like such a fucking victory, because you're like, yeah, Tom Hanks is still in this.
And then all of a sudden he's like crazy blonde hair and you know,
he's a silent fish assassin who has like a statue erected to the time he tried to kill himself on the island. Like that's like it's and it's because of Hanks that jump works too. You know, like if it's a regular, maybe it's a different actor, we see them as a skinnier person. We're like, okay, I get it. But like to see Hanks like that just sort of feels a little more shocking.
The movie's 2 hours and 20 minutes, and there's 24 minutes of score, and 7 minutes of that is the end credits. So there's, very, very little music for a guy who uses a lot of music. Usually.
And also for a movie that lacks dialogue for so much, like you'd think like, we'll have this score that kind of like, you know, that can like fill things out. Like, well, don't worry, we'll rely on that. And he's like, no, we can't rely on that. Like, we can't rely on anything that's gonna put the audience at ease about it. You know what I mean? Right. Yeah.
He's taking away most of his tricks. He's like, he's a guy who's had a lot of movies with like quotable, witty dialogue, you know, great comic chemistry and energy between actors, crazy set pieces and special effects. Like it feels like this is sort of him doing his like dogma experiment in certain ways, but
he's been doing that. Sorry, go ahead.
No, with the weird gambit of the, split in half production. What were you going to say?
No, just I feel like, and this is something I appreciate about Zemeckis, is like, I feel like he's just kept doing that. Like, okay, now I'm going to do like this mocap thing. Now I'm going to do like this kind of movie. Now I'm going to like, he's always like challenging himself. And that's something I like a lot about the Castaway, What Lies Beneath Castaway of it all, is like, you're like watching someone who's like, knows how to do what he's doing really well. Yes. And it's sort of like, maybe I'll try this.
Right.
Exactly. Right. And that's what I really appreciate about him. Even when I'm like, oh my God, Polar Express is terrifying to me on a spiritual level.
I mean, it's why I'm happy that we're doing him. And we were talking with a friend last night, and she was like, are you worried about any of the movies coming up? Because often, especially if we're covering a long filmography, we're like, oh, that's going to be a bummer episode, or just I don't want to rewatch that movie, that one's boring. And the movies of his that I dislike are all just so weird, and even just like on a level of, why was he doing this? Like, what was the thing he was trying to challenge himself with by taking on this project? I've been watching so many interviews and shit with him, but also like about him, and I forget what it was on the special features for, but there was some interview with Spielberg where he said, like, I think it was Spielberg who said it, but like, he's a guy who really thrives from conflict, and he needs to feel like he's fighting against something. He's like kind of incapable of getting complacent, for better or worse.
Fascinating. Yeah.
And repeating himself. And then I saw him say in this interview where he is like, there's this double-edged sword to becoming successful and respected, which is then people don't really question you as much. He said, like, after Back to the Future, people kind of trusted that I knew what I was doing, and I hated that, because I wanted people to question me. I wanted to have to fight for my ideas, and I wanted to be worried that things might not work. And when you're surrounded by glad handlers, it's a big issue. And he's like, it's paramount that you have to surround yourself with the right people who you know are critical, and also challenge yourself doing things that might not work. And he's like a great example of that. A dude who is clearly very willing to make movies that could completely blow up in his face.
Yeah.
And have.
I mean, even Flight was... Did that make enough money? It was sort of
made
like
money. Yeah.
It was like a solid hit. Not like, Forrest Gump-sized hit or whatever. But like, I think it was made relatively cheaply considering the star power or whatever. And it did well.
Again, tangent, but Flight was actually one of the movies that made me hire James Badge Dale on my first film. Because I'd seen him in Iron Man.
The legend, Iron Man 3.
Flight, and he's so good in Iron Man 3.
Those two performances, I was like, oh, yeah, that guy.
It's interesting because he initially, I feel like when he emerged, played like kind of like, because like he was like on 24, right? He was like, in like shows like that. He was kind of like a stocky guy. He's in The Departed, and then in Flight and Iron Man 3, he's kind of like skinny and wiry and weird. Like, and then so it's like, oh, this guy actually has like some tools.
He's a fucking chameleon. He's amazing.
He's so good.
I love him.
He's like doing like the Jeremy Davies part in Flight. Like it's...
Right.
And yeah, apparently he fought like really, really fucking hard for that role.
Oh wow!
I know.
that.
I remember seeing some interview with him where he talked about how badly they didn't want to cast him because of that perception of who he was, and so he like lost the weight in advance to convince them that he could do it.
That sounds
and did
like
a bunch of reads, right, for like one scene with a character who's never even named, but he's so good in that. Also, Iron Man 3 rips. It's the best Marvel movie up until this point.
You know, like I don't love all the Marvel movies, but I'm Marvel trash. My friends call me. I will watch them all. I don't care. Like I grew up with Marvel.
Same.
Like I'm there.
Same.
But my favorite ones are the ones like Iron Man 3 that kind of like deconstruct like the superhero thing, but also that talk about like, oh, this guy has PTSD and is having panic attacks, and that's why that's fucking interesting.
Yeah.
And so one of the
Iron
first
Man 3
questions
is about like talk therapy. Like it's this guy
Exactly.
flew into a black hole. He needs to deal with it.
We stand Iron Man 3 almost as much as we stand Sully on this podcast.
I can't even engage with the idea that they're on the same level as
Two
I genuinely
American
can't do this.
classics.
two American heroes.
Two American heroes. I mean, look, Iron Man 3 also saved all the people aboard that flight. They have
There's like 12
Oh,
of them,
that was
but yeah.
3.
Yeah.
Yeah,
was two.
the
Yeah,
barrel of
it was
monkeys, where he gets
Yeah,
them all.
which I love.
Yeah.
Such a good sequence. Wait, what was Zemeckis' last movie?
his last movie was Welcome to Marwin.
Oh dear.
Yeah. And
I didn't
his
want that
next
one.
movie, which will be out by the time this episode comes out, is his remake of Roald Dahl's The Witches.
With Anne Hathaway.
Yes, I saw that trailer.
Written by the legendary screenwriting trio that we all know and love so well. Robert Zemeckis, Kenya Barris, and Guillermo del Toro, obviously.
Oh,
Those
my
three
God.
guys
Kenya
are-
Barris?
The three
Robert
credited
Zemeckis,
writers
Kenya
of
Barris.
that movie.
Guillermo del Toro are the screenwriters of The Witches. Which
Did you guys watch Black AF?
I did not.
No. That's the one where he plays himself, right? That's the Netflix show, right? Yeah, did not watch that.
It's a struggle. I don't think you need to.
I got an audition breakdown for that show, and I didn't go up for it just because I had made a decision for the sake of my sanity not to play personal assistants anymore.
Yeah,
and it was one of those. But just seeing the breakdown, I was like, really, this is the thing you want to do with your overall deal?
Yeah.
You want to be the lead of the show?
It's very strange. I mean, I think everyone thinks they can be Larry David, and truly, it's not possible.
He's one of a kind, yes.
Yeah,
It's a
he
narrow line.
truly is. And even he has bad seasons of Curb. So, like, let's live in reality, everyone. You know what I mean? By the way, Griffin, do you ever worry about all the shit you talk on this podcast and not getting
Absolutely,
jobs?
constantly. Are you kidding me? Yes, I have probably torpedoed my entire career. So in certain ways, I have less to lose, but also far less security. No, it's look. It is a thing that I have made my peace with to some degree.
Yeah.
But it is definitely a thing I've been conscious about that I have sort of made my choice. I also feel like these are the couple things I tell myself. One, I have such divergent tastes, as proven by my love of Sully, that almost anyone I've ever shit talked on the show, there's probably at least one thing they've done that I love.
Yeah.
I really, with very few exceptions, couldn't find at least one thing where I would wax poetic about that to them. I also find that a lot of people in the industry, such as yourself, but also like people who are like executives at studios or directors or screenwriters or showrunners or whoever who listen to the show, some of them who become guests, some of them who very much don't want come on the show and say anything potentially damning about anyone else, but will DM privately. I think get that it's not a negative show.
Yeah, it's all like love-based. Yeah.
That we praise so much that even if we're like, ugh, that thing's a fucking stinker, it's not like we're just Dunktown.
Yeah, for sure.
But I worry about it constantly, yes. And to some degree, I think my career is over. Thank you for
I think
asking.
about that sometimes because I genuinely have, I don't know if it's like I don't care, because I do care, but I genuinely just will just say things. I'm like, whoopsie daisy. Yeah.
I support it. I mean, I prefer that to, how most people comport themselves.
You very wisely have sort of like gotten off of Twitter
Yeah, I was like, I can't engage with this right now. Also
Very
because
wise.
my tweets, like, I'll hear about them from execs. So like, yeah, we saw that tweet, so we really wanted to make sure we did this. I was like, oh Lord. Okay.
Right,
Which is
just
also
like-
a great
right.
tool, but like, I'm like,
Sure.
it's too
At a
much.
certain point, you wonder if it's worth it, like risk versus reward.
Should we talk about this movie?
Yeah.
Yeah, let's
okay.
talk about that. Okay, one thing we didn't talk about the plane crash.
Let's get into it because I love
which
plane
is
crashes
such a
in
good
movies.
plane crash.
So
Just not my number one nightmare because it's maybe one reason I'm less afraid of this one is because like when am I ever going to be on a FedEx plane? I mean, you know, like it's not the true nightmare of like being in your chair and then just being told like brace for impact or whatever.
Also, those planes will fly through things that commercial flights will never fly through because
Yes,
they
because they
want
don't
us
have to
become
worry
more
about
commercial flights. Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
They don't have to worry about
Screaming
bouncing
people.
around. Right.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Which is that also freaks me out. God, imagine just flying one of those things like
Absolutely not.
But I think
but
that
just
was
like-
Hanks's whole idea. I mean, he
Yeah,
was like,
right,
the whole
right.
spark of it for him was like, these planes operate differently and fly over different areas, and
Yeah.
it would be harder to track. Yeah. What were you saying, David? Sorry.
well, just like the little details, like the way you're sort of seeing, you know, how fucked up everything is out the window, but you can't really, you know, like you're just seeing glimpses of like the focus on the guy hitting his head, like, which is such a,
Bleeding out
you
on the
know,
floor.
mundane injury. Like it's literally a put your seatbelt on injury. Like, and yet it feels so insurmountable. Like it just like, you're just like, this is, they're not going to be able to deal. Like, this is it. It's over.
I love that
I don't
moment
know.
where, and this is the moment I always remember from it. It's when you see the actual water, and I always think it's earlier than it's going to be, and then it's always later than I remember. But just that, like, the whole sequence is amazing because you have the moment where he like wants to get the locket as opposed to the life jacket, and then the guy's like, sit down, do that, do this, do that, and then he hits his head, and then he's just standing there looking out of the window, and then when that water shows up, holy fuck.
That's the
It's
thing.
so
crazy,
It's that moment where it's like, there's no avoiding it. The plane is going into the water. Whether or not you die now, there's no pulling up for this. It fills me with so much dread. It is fascinating that I feel like the reputation at the time was like, oh, you have never seen a plane crash sequence this visceral, this terrifying, this technically advanced. Like it was sort of cited as a high watermark for like plane crash terror. And then 10 or 12 years later, both Hanks and Zemeckis are like, I want to make another crash movie.
Yeah, word.
Right.
I think this one is better than Sully's. Sorry. Actually, but here's the thing about Sully's plane crash. Sully's plane crash is amazing because
It is.
and this is what I enjoy about I think about both is that for my like anxiety about planes is that like you can survive, but also like people know what to do. And watching someone calmly like know what to do is like that's the only reason, that's all I get out of Sully is like you just tell me what happened exactly in the real world, but like with some drama and in 2 hours, you know? And then Griffin. Your face right now, Griffin.
Nia, I'm so sorry. I just have to correct you. It was not a crash, it was a forced water landing.
It was
As
a
Sully
forced
himself
water landing.
said. It was a forced water landing.
100%. But I think it's like okay.
No, that's inarguably the best part of Sully. Like, I don't know a single Look, I've made so many people watch that movie, and a lot of them don't like it, but everyone agrees the fucking crash is stunning. And so much of it is just that's such a different energy you've ever seen of him trying to continue to check off all the boxes once the plane has landed. His management of the crisis is the most stunning thing. It's also just the type of shit that Hanks is absolutely best at as an actor, and is the same muscle that this movie uses really well.
Yeah. I fucking love it. I love the moment in the bathroom where he's taking off his Band-Aid right before.
Yes. And he's like,
It's just such a great, it's just so well done. And that's what I love about Zemeckis.
and something
like,
we've all done.
Yeah.
We've all,
Exactly. Yeah.
It's also just as a kid, like any movie like this would fill me with so much anxiety and dread. Like I would just, any movie where it's like based around a crisis, something going wrong, the pressure cooker, or like horror movies in particular, thrillers, I would want to see them, and then I would sit there in so much dread of when like the shoe drops and the movie becomes like a fucking boiler room. And like relishing that like It's a scene where they're like at a family dinner and they're like making cute banter and they're comparing their planners and this is like nice character stuff. The moment when he's in the bathroom with the Band-Aid is such a nice character thing. But I flashed back to me being 11 years old and just being like, fuck, this is the last second you're going to get of this shit. Like, get ready. The rest of the movie is going to stress you out.
Dude,
enjoy it while you can. Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, man, the tooth. Right. Like, we've talked about a lot of the island stuff, but there's just like, you're just so stressed out immediately by like any little thing, like the tooth. His tooth hurts and you're like, oh, fuck, 20 minutes from now, that's going to be a problem. Like, you see, I don't know, there's like that early shot on when he washes up on the beach and the packages are washing up. Mm-hmm. And I just immediately start having that anxiety, like, dude, you got to get the packages. Dude, right, hey, wake up. We got to get the packages. Yeah. Like, they're going to go away. They're going to get, like, you just immediately are so stressed out by any interaction with any object.
And Zemeckis is such a big setup payoff guy. Like Back to the Future is all based around setup payoff, but like really cleanly set up and explained and visualized so you can't miss it. Yeah. And this movie lets you fill in a lot of the gaps. He doesn't hammer things too hard in the setup. Like even just I like that Helen Hunt's character is also really busy and focused on her career. That it's not a thing where it's like, he has the woman that he's leaving waiting at dinner, and he spends the entire time on the island wishing he had spent more time, It's like they both were mutually, that's what made them attracted to each other. All the shit where the families are making fun of them for not getting married, and like how excited they are. When the beeper goes off, there's such a nice moment where she looks at him, and you're ready for her to go like, like, do the sort of classic, like, other woman sigh. And instead she just goes like, okay, so let's figure it out. Where do we celebrate Christmas? It's in the car? Okay. Like, that's the fact that they're... that they're both equally haunted by the fact that they couldn't slow down and appreciate it when they had it. But it also means that the stuff like the toothache, he sets up similarly subtly. Like, he does it one time. He does one beat at the dinner table. They go, is it something with the food? He goes, no. And then it takes like an hour for it to come back in again. But as a movie watcher, God damn it, now he's crashed on the island and the fucking tooth is going to come into play. Yeah, you're just sitting 100%. There in dread of when the tooth becomes an issue. And that's like the most harrowing part of the entire film.
Dude, because then it makes you think about like all the things that you have to go get regularly checked out that like, well, if I were on an island, this would just be the worst. Like all those cavities would just end up being a mess and blah, blah, blah. Like, thinking about George Washington's wooden teeth, I'm just like, wow. That could be me if I were on this island.
Right. It's like you only have to set up one medical issue like that and watch him solve it in the most grotesque way. Even though the scene itself is not that bloody, it's very visceral and upsetting.
It's that it's like eye stuff, gum, teeth stuff. Like just the idea of anything touching them, you just immediately tense up in a movie, I think.
Because you just know how much the nerves are in there.
Eye stuff is my number one worst, but this scene hits me in the way that eye stuff usually does.
Eye stuff is really tough. Oh, I said to Forky, to my wife, Nia, I'm married to Forky.
I literally was just about to say, did you say Forky? Which, my wife. Congratulations.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you.
David thought that Toy Story 4 looked bad and that Forky looked stupid, and he claimed that Forky was a war criminal, and I bet that he was going to like Toy Story 4 and like Forky, and so we made a bet in which I said, if he ended up enjoying Forky, he had to marry Forky. And so
Also, my wife just doesn't want me to say her name on the podcast, so now we just call her Forky. But no,
so
I'm married to Forky.
Very cleanly.
But we were watching, and I was like, he's gonna take his fucking tooth out with an ice skate, and she just looked at me and she was like, I can't even know that happens. Like, not only am I not watching that scene, I'm mad that you just told me that is a scene. Like that's how visceral that sounds.
Oh yeah. It's the worst.
It's so telling of his storytelling instincts, though, that like he does that he falls to the ground, and that's when you cut to 4 years later, because he knows that's the peak you're gonna hit of this first stage. And now that you've seen him do this, you can in your mind fill in how he would handle any similar crisis across the next 4 years.
He's like graduated too, like, okay, survival level 2. Yeah.
Right. His XP's gone up, you know? Like
exactly.
He's got it. And so you can just cut ahead to him now getting like the new skin where he's fucking cut and got blonde locks.
Right, it's literally like Red Dead Redemption, except it's Castaway Redemption too.
Oh man, they should do that. Rockstar should do a Castaway game.
That'd be
Chuck
so
Nolan
good.
should be a playable character in fucking Mortal Kombat or some shit.
Right.
They
should
like
his weapons are like Dragon Rock and the Ice Skate.
Yeah. I went down this weird rabbit hole. I was looking at like IMDb trivia facts for the movie, which are not always really reliable. And there was one that said there is a scene that was in the theatrical and VHS versions of the movie that was then cut out for the DVD and later streaming and home video releases, in which you see him try to commit suicide, and instead you only have the scenes where he talks about it and where you see the rope later. And I was like, that feels unlikely that it was
actually was going to say, I think I remember that scene.
So here's the weird thing. I remember that scene too. But I was like, why would that be cut out only at the DVD stage? Yeah. Especially since this was 2000. It would have come out in DVD and VHS at the same time. Yeah. Why was there, like, not a test screening version, but why would he have recut this movie after the fact and it not be, like, a known thing? So I went down this whole rabbit hole. There was, like, a whole Mandela effect thing on the internet where people are arguing over whether or not that scene ever existed. And people are saying, like, I had the memory, you have the memory. I viscerally remember a scene in which he is at the top of the mountain at night. He hangs himself from the tree. The branch breaks. He falls to the ground.
Exactly.
It's haunted me. And then I watched the movie, and there's the scene where you see him pull the rope up, and there's the scene where he says to the guy at the end that he tried suicide, and the actual visual of it was missing. And people contend the scene never existed. It's not on any deleted scenes. You can't find it anywhere. There's no alternate cuts of the movie. It's just that the suggestion from those two scenes places the image in your head so vividly.
That's crazy.
And like, as much as I still want to say, like, no, it's the fucking Bernstein Bears, and I saw the scene.
Yeah.
This is the kind of movie.
Really great filmmaking.
Yeah, that's the whole power that this movie traffics in, is that you fill in all these gaps from the couple of things you do see. It takes so many leaps.
That happened to me with The Hours, where I love The Hours.
Yeah,
and it's not that I invented a scene, but I just misremembered a performance beat. And when Nicole Kidman's on the platform, she's like, I'm going to London, bye, bitch. And her husband's like, dude, like, you're not well. Like, please come back home, whatever. And she says, my life has been stolen from me. Mm-hmm. And I always remembered it as a yell, like her yelling, like, my life has been stolen from me. And then I rewatched it a couple of years ago, and she, like, literally, like, whispers it. But it was, I guess the emotional impact of it was so intense for me. Like, when I watched it when I was, like, 12, that I was like, I remembered it always as, like, a scream. Like, because that's how I felt it. And I was just like, holy shit. Like, how did I just misremember that? So I'm like, I'm not surprised at all that that scene doesn't exist. Because I remember watching Castaway when I was older and being like, oh, that scene, I thought I remember the scene differently.
There's so many
Reddit threads of people saying that.
Well, yes, that's true. But doing this podcast also, I feel like that happens to me all the time, where I'm like getting ready for a scene I remember really well, where I'm like, God, this scene rules. And then it either maybe barely exists at all, or it's like you say, tonally completely not what I remembered. But I remember the emotion of it, and that's what I remember.
We went to see Armageddon at a drive-in last week. The Blank Check crew in semi-adjacently parked cars. And I was in a car with my brother and his girlfriend, our good friend. And neither of them had seen the movie before. And so, like, I Don't Want to Miss a Thing hits the earlier strains of it when the animal cracker scene is happening. Mm-hmm. And the two of them were like, that's it? That's the only time they use the song in the movie? And I was like, no, get ready. They're buttering you up. They bring it back from Maximum Impact. And I was so fucking certain that the song played under, spoiler, when he does the final, like, over video feed goodbye to Liv Tyler. I remember Bruce Willis giving the hero speech. Like, he pushes Ben Affleck back into the thing. The song starts playing. He comes on the screen and he says, like, I love you, you know, you're my son, whatever, all the hero shit. And the music's playing under it. And I was just like, why,
so
when does it happen? And of course, it's the fucking end credits over B-roll of their wedding.
So
I was
funny.
It's over the credits.
certain that it played under that scene.
Yeah.
Right.
It's crazy how that happens, isn't it?
Yeah.
Castaway, guys. Are there other? Well, Wilson. We haven't talked about
Can we
Wilson.
talk about that?
We
We
haven't-
haven't
Wilson.
talked about Wilson.
I mean, I guess it's funny that just became the meme from the movie. Like, it is so effective. Like, I still feel crappy when Wilson goes away.
Oh,
I do that at all. I have done that throughout my entire life. I don't know if you guys like that. Just like anthropomorphize things.
Oh.
That I
for
have,
sure.
like in my, right, like pencils or fucking.
I'm sorry, David, you don't know if I do that?
All right, look, I'm just giving you guys the benefit of the doubt.
Extrapolate
But, like,
based on everything you know about me and my obsession with Toy Story. Yeah, I anthropomorphize the far too many objects that I own.
It's the one. The one thing in this, I'm like, oh, I would do that within a week. Like, I would have a whole cast of characters. I think it's the only way I could deal with it.
Yeah, for sure. 100%.
Right. There's the Last Man on Earth sort of heightening of this bit where he makes like an entire supporting cast of like, I don't know if either of you watched that show.
I saw the
But-
first few episodes.
I watched. Yeah.
Will Forte has like 8 different like balls and pieces of sporting
so funny.
equipment that he paints faces
That's
on. They
so
all have different
good.
names. And he has like very complicated multi-part conversations with them. And it feels like they think that's a comedic heightening of it, but in reality, I think that's a more realistic version of what someone would
Right,
do.
yeah.
They would not
Yeah.
settle for one ball.
No. Right.
But the
I
Wilson
couldn't just
stuff
have
is
Wilson.
just, it's so elegantly done. Like everything that you could describe it to someone and it would sound hokey of like, oh, his hand is bleeding. He picks up the ball, then he looks at it. The handprint kind of looks like a face. He paints it. He names it Wilson because of the thing. But like the scenes are so well written and so well acted, and it's an area in which the movie gets really patient and actually spends the time to like slow down and show you the build of him starting to personify Wilson.
Yeah.
I mean, and it's like the joke in Bridesmaid that like her lowest point in the movie is her on her mom's couch watching the Wilson scene and sobbing hysterically.
Right, yeah.
You know, that it's like an ultimate, like, you think it's stupid, you're not going to fall for it, and every time you get a lump in your throat when Wilson gets lost at sea.
Oh, so good. That's such a great moment, too. Also, just for, like, the mechanics of the plot, like, more and more of the island is, like, slipping away as he gets closer to the real world.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Which I love.
And that's also, that's when the score is kicking in for the first time. It's like he's fully leaving behind that movie.
In my memory, Wilson got blown away or whatever. Like, and I forgot that it's you just watch him leave.
Yeah.
Like he just sort of like bobbles away, and Hanks goes into the water, and you're like, you just sort of know, like, no, it's like he can't do this anymore. Like he's got to say goodbye to this thing.
And there's that.
It would be
thing of
great
just,
if he
like,
showed back up with Helen Hunt with Wilson under his arm and was like, "This is Wilson."
Yeah, or it would be great if when he gets to land, Helen Hunt is like, I actually got married and Wilson's her husband. Wilson somehow got to land.
I met this
before
guy
her.
Oh my
like
God,
a month
amazing.
ago.
I married him like a week ago. He just got here, but it was a quick whirlwind romance.
He's gone for 5 years, right? 5 years, and she...
4 or something like that. 4
Four,
or 5 years.
four,
Yeah.
And then
Four
she ends
change,
up married with 2 kids, or...
It's
One.
one
right?
kid. She marries
Yeah.
her dentist, so it's another
Mr. Big.
dental,
Hilarious.
indignity. She marries Chris Noth, right
The
at the
dentist
height
that
of
he
Mr.
never
Big.
saw enough, that he never had his teeth looked at by.
Perfect casting.
Chris Noth is perfect casting, where you're kind of like, I guess if Tom Hanks isn't around, this guy will do. You know what I mean? Where I'm like, yeah,
I think
he's
it's
sort
more
of.
like... You're like... I don't like that guy.
Well, there's that
Chris
too.
Noth is,
That
like,
kind
very
of
charming,
like,
but you're also like, something's off.
right. There's
I
something
think-
slippery about
yes.
him, right?
There's that thing, because you don't want to be too charmed by whoever she's with now.
Exactly.
You
Right.
you
But you wanna
want to
get it.
have the romantic sentimentality of like, she should leave her husband.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, It's just, I mean, the whole end of this movie, and also like maybe when I saw it when I was a kid, I was like, man, I don't get this shit. This is like, and now I'm just like the whole time I'm
Ditto.
like, man, what the fuck would you do? Like, what would you do? Like,
Ditto.
Yeah.
I hated
So
all this
good.
shit as a kid, and it's weird because I was certainly a very sappy, sentimental kid, and I was not like, you know, a boy who was allergic to romance or emotion in movies in that kind of way. But I remember just thinking like, ugh, like what? Like the movie gets so fucking overstated. And the only area in which I think the movie really does, I think the speech he gives to Nick Searchy about like what kept him going is a little bit overdone. I think
I
all
don't
the
think you
Helen Hunt
need
stuff works.
Yeah.
I don't think
I don't
need it.
think you
I
need the speech.
I think that's the one area where he kind of does the Spielberg thing, the thing that often plagues late period Spielberg, where he just doesn't trust that you get the message of the movie, and he has a scene where someone spells it out, or he does
Right,
a
or someone
visual
says
metaphor that hammers it in too hard, or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And it's also interesting to me that, like, you know, Hanks gained weight for the first chunk of the movie, right? So he was bigger than he had ever been before, so that there would be a more striking contrast when he lost weight and then was pretty much more cut than he ever had been before. And then they took like a little break where he like, you know, shaved and gained a little bit of weight back before they shot the stuff back on land. But that one scene, that one monologue, he looks a little plumper in that. I just noticed even then when they cut out from that to him back on the road trying to deliver the package with the wings, that he's back to looking leaner. I wonder if that was a late reshoot because they felt they needed to have more closure.
Hammer something home, right? Yeah,
I truly,
yeah,
having gone through the studio system, movies would be so much better if we could just
Without them?
limit.
Yeah,
honestly, I mean, I just
like
it's
if
a different
just
skill
like
set.
if
There are some great
reshoots aren't
ones.
allowed, like, you know, movies.
No,
would be better if
reshoots
it's
are
just-
amazing. No, reshoots
Right, okay,
are
okay.
amazing.
notes. You're talking about notes.
I'm talking about notes from because there are some execs, and I think I'm working with them now, who are great at like, wow, like to the point where I'm like, what? Why can't this just be everyone? And then there are some where you're just like, we don't even have the same taste in movies, so why are you giving me notes on my film? You know? And it's and I think that's the sort of thing. It's like you have to figure out when you're like directing, like, and editing, like, okay, what's a you problem? What's a me problem? Like, what's you being a little daft, and what's me just knowing better? You know? And it's a hard balance. But like that, for example, it's like maybe that scene is good for the people who like literally are like, what? I don't know. Tell me more. But in terms of like the movie being just like good and solid and like growing into understanding the movie, like we all did, you know, from being kids to adults, like, it would just be so much better.
It feels
anyway, that's my
like a
complaining.
weird half measure because the movie does end with this sense of open-endedness, and I feel like that ending works for people. People like still talk about that ending all the time of him at the literal crossroads. It's not subtle, but I think it's effective, and I think the Helen Hunt stuff works. And I almost just
I think
wonder
the
if
Helen
he
Hunt
was
stuff
like,
works because she's a good actress, and like,
Agreed.
it's just such a mental whammy to consider. Like, you know, what if like the weird guilt that she would feel like having given up on him, even though of course she's gonna, you know, like just that, like it's that's Twilight Zone-y enough for you to just be so invested in.
Well,
the
and
Crossroads, I like
the Penny Lost stuff. Like, I'm such a fucking sucker for the Penny Desmond plotline on Lost, but the realization of just like, God damn it, she was looking for him the whole time. Like, it's so much worse that it's like, not that, oh, she remarried, she moved on, but she tried so hard to hold out for so long. She was actively trying to believe he was gonna come back, searching for him, and then finally broke. That's
finally
the
moved
thing
on,
that's
and then
right. That's so heartbreaking, and it is like a very messy adult ending of just
I love
like,
the way they do it.
right, but she's got a kid and she's got a life, and it's also like there's no way they can go back to what it was before. They're both fundamentally changed by this thing now. It's really permanently affected both of them. I wonder if it was just a thing of like, the audience needs to hear Tom Hanks say he's gonna be okay. so that they don't worry that this guy's going to be depressed for the rest of his life.
He's just ruined.
Right,
Yeah.
Castaway 2 is him in therapy.
I mean,
Absolutely. And dating
I
Bettina,
recommend it for everyone
maybe.
anyway.
And
And
dating
dating who?
Bettina, that's the nice Austin, or not Austin, a nice Texan artist.
Oh, right. So ridiculous.
Um,
So absurd. I think Tom's performance in the bookend, the end of the film, is so good.
agree.
He just really inhabits three very different people.
Yeah.
So well.
He's
I mean,
haunted without seeming like sort of overacty about it,
Yes.
if that makes
Yeah.
sense. Yeah.
100%.
I really think, because this is the year that Russell Crowe wins for Gladiator, and that
Right.
was so much a sort of like star anointment. Here we go, new leading man. Gladiator wins Best Picture.
Also, I love Gladiator, but continue.
I just like the next year is A Beautiful Mind, which even if Gladiator is a better film than Beautiful Mind is very much like Russell Crowe skill piece.
Very
I don't know how
Oscar.
that performance ages, but like there was
He's
even the
good in
thread
it.
at the
I mean, it's
time
not a
of
movie I
like.
Right.
Right. People thought, oh, is it going to be a fucking Hanks thing where he wins 2 back-to-back years because he just had 2 juggernaut movies and it was unavoidable. There's a part of me that wishes that Hanks had won for this and Crowe had won for Beautiful Mind instead.
Hanks would have won
Yeah.
for this if he didn't have 2 Oscars.
Yeah.
I don't think
Right,
there's
yeah.
really much question for it.
Yeah.
Just because physical transformation is just something they value so much. Like,
Yeah.
and the fact that Hanks did it feels like sort of especially crazy because it's
And
like,
it's the whole
dude,
movie.
you could
The
just
whole-
play
Yeah.
nice guys
Yes.
for the rest of your life. Like, you didn't have to go lose 60 pounds. You know, like, I feel like there's just that
Yeah.
weird, like,
He
they kind of bow
benched
down to
himself
anyone who does
for
that.
a year. The biggest movie star in the world was like, I'm going to spend a year just getting skinny and growing out a caveman beard so that I can
Right.
finish filming a movie.
This-
It's like the
bananas.
antithesis of Joaquin Phoenix doing it for that absurd documentary.
Yes. Yes.
Where everyone was
Absolutely.
like, don't waste our time like this.
You mean talking about the documentary film, of course.
I still haven't seen that movie. Is it good?
Well, in the words of Martin Scorsese, I get it. I see what you're doing there.
That was so wild. Whereas they were like, well, it's produced by Scorsese. Scorsese was like, actually, I didn't produce it. Like, my name's not on it.
It
And they
felt
were
like
like, well,
he was
did
going
you
to
like
direct it
it?
initially, and he just retained it. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And then they were like, did you like it? And he was like, I get it. Like, I got what it was doing.
I loved when everyone was getting all like verklempt about him being like, oh, I don't understand or like those Marvel movies or the
Yeah,
superhero
right.
movies. And I was like, what do you need him to like these for?
Did you
yeah.
think he liked them? Like, that's
is
the
that
thing.
gonna
Where I'm
give
like,
you?
do you think he's like, you think
Who
he's,
cares?
you know, Ant-Man and the Wasp? It's just like, you know, like, what did you expect Martin Scorsese to start saying?
Like, what? Like, why are you looking at Scorsese to validate your comic book movie love?
That's,
Get out of
that's
here.
the
Right.
fucking thing. I feel like the three of us are very much on the same page where it's like
Marvel
we have,
trash
like,
is the best way to put it, Nia, where it's just like,
Right.
look.
Look, I love that shit, and I love lofty cinema, and I understand the conflict between the two of them. I don't need him to tell me that it's okay for me to like Iron Man 3. I like
Exactly.
Iron Man 3.
Right.
It's irrelevant.
I'm doing fine.
I
like Iron Man 3.
know.
I like Martin Scorsese. I like a lot of
Right.
other shit.
It's
Like,
fine.
everything's
it's fine.
fine.
Not everyone I like has to like everything I like. That's not on them. I don't know if you had this, Nia, but just like being around. Did you work on the pilot, or were you only on the series?
Only on the pilot.
Okay. So, like, during the pilot, I just constantly, like, without seeming like a hanger-on, would just try to position myself in earshot of wherever he was whenever there was downtime, because it was just like, I'm so curious what his opinion is on everything.
Yeah.
Like, I was just so curious to hear him drop morsels, and anytime there was, like, a complicated setup, and, like, Cannavale or whatever had the courage to make small talk with him and ask him for his opinion on stuff, it was that kind of thing where I was like, I want to know, like, does he like fucking Pixar movies? Like, what does he think of Borat? I'm not going to be offended if he doesn't like something I like.
Yeah.
I'm just curious what populist stuff he likes and what he doesn't.
Exactly, yeah. He's just like he's an elder statesman. Like, it's just like information at that point. You don't have to take it personally.
Totally. And just to clarify, his attack on was so much more brutal because he did not even see the movie. He said, I read the
your
script.
heart. Right.
Yeah. I get it. I see what you're doing here. I don't need to be part of this.
Also, it's basically like, you know, like a juiced up Kings of Comedy.
Yep.
King of Comedy. So I think that's also kind of funny to
That's
watch
his. I get
the
it. I understand what
$1
you're
billion version.
doing. I did that before. I don't need to do it again. Have fun.
Yeah. Yeah. He's like, I've literally like, anyway, whatever. I can.
I made the same fucking movie. Yeah. Also happened at a roundtable interview sitting across from Todd Phillips, who just had to sit there and nod his head.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. So I find it fascinating that Todd Phillips did.
It is. Wow. To your point, Nia, of how good Hanks is in this last sort of third of the movie, this is all the stuff where I'm like, give him the fucking Oscar. This is like him just sort of like staking his claim of like, I'm one of the all-timers, where the way he plays all those scenes that could be so hackneyed and they do like this beat like 4 or 5 times, but him picking up the crab leg, seeing the lighter, flicking the light switch on and off, like all his weird, having a difficult time readjusting to society, but also just being fascinated by, these things are so easy, these things I took for granted, and what a battle it was for me to get to sustainability with all these things. The part that is so heartbreaking for me, you have that shot of him in the hotel room where it's just the lights flicking on and off and you can't see his body, and then it cuts to the other side and he's lying on the floor with the switch and he's put the stopwatch on the bed, and it's like, oh right, this guy wouldn't be able to immediately go back to sleeping in a bed. At this point, he is conditioned to feel comfortable sleeping in a cave. He needs to recreate the setup of what that felt like for him until he's comfortable enough to sleep on a comforter.
Yes, 100%. It's so, you're just like, fuck, like there's a long road ahead of you, sir. Like, it's totally, it's like this thing where it's equally like the triumph of like human adaptability and how, we are actually incredibly resilient creatures, but also like everything leaves a mark.
Totally.
And I find that,
there was controversy, I mean, on a relative scale, but I feel like people complained a lot at the time, and people still cite this as an example of like, oh, the trailer gives away the ending. All the trailers for Castaway had the scene with him in the plane and Nick Searcy saying, we had a funeral, and he says, what was in the casket? Like, and people were like, why would you put that in the fucking movie? And Zemeckis' line, which
His response
I kind
is so funny.
Agree with. He's like, first of all, we've done so many like surveys on this. People want to know. They want to be told exactly what they're getting. They pretend that they don't, but I've been in these fucking meetings with the market research and the focus groups. They always respond better. And this is an expensive movie with one guy on an island. And the other thing is, like, it's like fucking McDonald's. Like, people want the comfort of understanding what they're signing up for. But the other thing is, and I haven't heard him say this. He said, like, it's Tom Hanks in a movie about a guy who gets stranded on an island. He's going to make it back. No one thinks he's not going to make it back.
Right, yeah.
Like, I understand we could lie to you and pretend like it's ambiguous, but people fucking know. It's a big studio movie. I'm adding in a lot more fucks. I'm
like, oh, Zemeckis really went in there.
I do think to some degree this movie would not have been as big a hit if they didn't reveal that in the trailer. Because it makes it easier to watch the struggles knowing, like, he's going to overcome. As you said, the movie becomes about, like, oh, it's like the human spirit, how much we can conquer anything.
It makes it more family appropriate. This is a Christmas movie, obviously, like, versus, like, this is going to be an intense fucking grind of a movie.
It's not
like
the fucking Revenant,
Exactly.
Right. They kind of needed to telegraph there was going to be a happy ending in order for audiences to sit through 2 hours of silence and ice skate root canals and shit.
What would the Revenant version of the happy ending be? What?
He sails to another island and there's just like a pyramid of skulls, and then he looks right at the camera. I don't know.
I was gonna say,
the end of the Revenant, he looks right at the camera. I do think it's almost. I almost applaud it. Where I'm like, damn, that's your ending.
Actually, that's so funny.
Yes,
I remember
he looks
being
right at the camera.
Hugely exhausted by that movie. I was like, just give them their fucking Oscars and go. Just take your Oscar and leave.
Hardest of agrees. I call that movie art house jackass.
Yeah, I'm just like boo boo, and I'm obsessed with Interview 2. I love him. I think he's brilliant, and like I love like basically all of his movies. I like whatever, but I remember watching that and being like, just please give Leo his Oscar. Maybe he'll relax. Like,
That is-
will he calm
Leo
down
needed
now?
to
Yes.
relax. Leo
Yeah.
fully needed to
Oh,
relax.
And,
Lord.
and look, you watch like Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and you're like, great, have some fun. You can kick back now. Pressure's
girl.
off.
Get it, girl. That's how I
Yeah.
felt
I
watching.
will say, I will confess, I only saw The Revenant one time, and I remember finding it a total grind and not
Yes.
really digging it at all. I
Yeah.
occasionally think about it. Like I'm mostly about the sort of first half hour with the big battle and like all the fucking landscape, and I'm like, man, maybe I should watch that again. Like, I bet it looks good. Like, you know, I've been
looks
thinking
amazing.
like, but anyway, I have not yet.
I
done that.
have no desire to ever see it again. It's the ultimate, I get it, I see what you're doing there movie for
Mm-hmm.
me. That's the one where I would say that at the round table. And then Interactive would say, who would let this guy in at the round table?
You'd be like, seize him.
Get his ass out of here.
All right,
Guys,
let's-
I have about like 10 more minutes before I have
Yes.
to.
Yes,
Skedaddle.
I was
let's do the
about to
box office
say,
game.
let's play the box office game.
Because
And then get you
yes,
out of here.
I was. This movie was a humongous hit. I feel like it broke records for a Christmas release at the time, and it was one of the
Did
highest
it?
grossing
What?
films of the year. I remember because I grew up such a box office nerd. My dad telling me it had either the biggest 3-day or 5-day for a Christmas movie at that point in time.
Wow.
I mean, I'm looking at the number and it's not insane. It did really well. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
like the movie made how much money? Jesus, I'm sorry, 1 second.
200.
The movie made $420 million worldwide. Like, I mean, like, you know, it was
Yeah.
a huge hit. It opened at 28, and then the next week it made 33 or whatever, you know, so like
Remember when that used to happen?
Yeah.
yeah, that sort of Christmas thing of like, oh yeah, this movie's just gonna stick around.
And make more money than the first weekend? Crazy.
That was the
It's the
other
third
thing.
biggest
I mean,
movie of the year after
So wait, so
Mission Impossible
Grinch-
2 and Gladiator.
Interesting.
Okay, worldwide. Wasn't Grinch? Did
Grinch
do
might have been the
better
biggest
domestic than
domestically,
overseas?
right? Because that
Yeah.
thing was not received worldwide. Right?
No.
Yes.
No,
right.
the
Only
rest of the
Americans
world
care
had-
about the Grinch.
Taste
Yeah.
that year.
The number 2 film at the box office, Christmas 2000, Griffin, also features Helen Hunt.
And What Women Want.
It's What Women Want. She was in the number 1 and number 2 movie.
That's hilarious. No
It's
wonder
what
they
I
were
want.
like, get rid of her.
Yeah, exactly.
too much.
She
Too much.
owned Christmas. All right,
Yeah.
so that's what we've talked about.
How the
on
Hunt
this
stole
podcast.
Christmas is what they should have called it.
Well, exactly. Number 3, Griffin is,
Yeah.
and you. By the way, you correctly guessed. Grinch is still in there. Grinch is 4. So
Still
the Jim
Grinch.
Carrey Grinch, the Ron Howard Grinch. Yes. Number 3. Okay. It's an actor you like. It's a sort of like a fantasy comedy drama. I don't know, fantasy like family drama.
2000s fantasy family drama. Is it The Family Man?
It's The Family Man, which I saw on a
Wow.
plane with Nicolas Cage and
Is it
Taya
good?
Leone. I remember it being bad.
Yeah,
I like
Kind of crummy. It's a Brett Ratner movie.
I was gonna say I'm not gonna stand for it too hard, but
How exciting.
it is
I remember it
lowest
being
bar in the world.
cheesy.
Brett Ratner's
It's
best
like-
film.
It's like he's rich. He's like a rich evil guy, and he wakes up
Yes.
and it's like, oh, what if I'd like married my high school sweetheart and I have a
Yeah.
nice family, right?
Oh,
like
I
that's
see.
it, right? Like that's the whole movie.
Yes, I think it's a sweet movie. It is the most un-Ratnery Ratner film.
And
It's
kind of
not-
an uncaged Cage as well, right? Like it's
this
a
is
pretty
my-
calm Cage.
This is my
movie.
big take on it as someone who was trying to watch all the Cages. It's I think the time he most successfully played just a normal person.
right.
Usually,
like
when
a
you ask
dude.
him to just play a guy, that's when he sort of short circuits.
I remember a
He's like, I don't know what you
scene-
mean.
where he like argues with his like gas station buddies. He like works. I don't know. He like has some blue collar job, and they're like saying that the Nets are going to win the title, and he's like, the Nets, and then they all look at him, and he goes, the Nets are due. The Nets are due. That's the only thing I remember out of Family Man.
Of course,
That's
that's the only thing.
I just remember that poster.
You're right here.
okay.
He's standing. Yes,
Yes,
it's very similar to his poster for The Weatherman, another movie he made.
Oh, yeah.
that's a movie I
Um,
love.
I know you do. All right. So number 4 is Grinch. Number 5 is a fairly high concept rom-com that I recently rewatched, and it holds up. Big movie star rom-com. It's a
Oh, I
stupid
know this
movie.
one.
What is it?
Take the
I
guess.
think. Is it Sliding Doors?
It's not Sliding Doors. That is a
Oh.
very high concept rom-com. That is the highest concept of rom-coms.
So it's a lower.
I do
lower
not know
concept.
I do not know if Sliding Doors holds up. I have not seen that movie in a long time.
I saw it like maybe 7 years ago, and I was like, love.
Need to rewatch.
Okay. It's sort of like, I don't know. I mean, to be clear, it's a silly ass movie. Big movie star.
Shallow Hal?
Not Shallow Hal. Not Shallow Hal. You're in the Gwyneth zone. Get out of the
I need
Gwyneth
to go away
zone.
from the Gwyneth zone, yeah.
Yeah.
Think darker hair.
Is it a Julia Roberts movie?
No.
Is it a Bullock?
It's a Bullock. Sandy Bullock.
Bullock. It's a Bullock high.
It's a movie
concept.
that shouts out the day after my birthday in its most iconic line.
Sandra Bullock, number 4 at the box office. High
You have a
concept
2000.
summer
High-
birthday, right?
Miss Congeniality?
Miss Congeniality.
Oh,
Wow.
What's the perfect date? April 25th.
April 20, yeah. Not too
Because
hot, not
it's
too
not
cold.
too hot, not too cold. Exactly. All you need
All
is
you
a
need
light
is a
jacket.
light jacket.
David, you threw me off because I don't think of that as a rom-com.
Me too, yeah.
It's not really a rom-com. I don't know how to, I guess it's just a comedy. It's sort of hard to describe
Yeah.
because I almost said action comedy, but it's not like there's really action.
Yeah.
She just
It's like
is an FBI agent.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like a cop comedy.
It's like,
It's a pageant comedy.
a cop pageant comedy.
That is a
With romantic overtones.
great
I rewatched
rewatch
it and
idea.
I love
Yeah.
it.
It's just like, Kane is locked in. Like everyone's just having fun. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like it's just sort of very easy to, I mean,
But
Heather Burns is fantastic.
Oh, the great Heather Burns. Was this its opening weekend?
This is its opening weekend. It's opening at number 5, and it's gonna
That's my
have
point.
huge legs. It really stuck
That's my
around.
point. Because I remember
Yeah.
like everyone thinking it looked hacky, it opening low, and then like 3 weeks later, people were like, "That movie's actually good," and then it ended up making $100 million. It just like
Right.
stayed
I love
and
that.
stayed and stayed and grew, and then I feel like it's only grown in estimation. And then they made a second one and immediately went, "That was the mistake. We shouldn't have."
Yeah.
Right.
The only
I've
thing- the
never
thing they did
seen
was-
the sequel.
It's really not good. The only good thing they did was hire Regina King, and then that's after that.
Great one.
It's
Armed
know.
and Fabulous. Right. Anyway, so that's the top 5. You've also got Emperor's New Groove.
so
You've
good.
got Dracula 2000. Never forget with Gerard Butler
that's
as
a
Dracula.
tough one.
What if Dracula was in 2000? You've got Vertical Limit with Chris O'Donnell. Climbing
sorry.
Mountains. You have Crouching Tiger beginning its,
That
sort of
movie
like
changed
Cinderella
my
run.
life.
Hell
Like,
yeah.
That's when I was like, Asian film.
What's going on over
And
there?
like-
Let's check
and
it
that
out.
Just like, I was just like, oh,
Oh, I see.
You
They
know?
make the best movies in Asia? I had no
Crazy.
idea. Well, this is
And
fun.
I think that was when my my John Woo, Chow Yun Fat life started,
Sure.
and then in high school it was Bong Joon Ho and Korean film right after that, and into college. Oh man, you guys should do a Bong Joon Ho. I'm obsessed with him, as everyone I've ever met knows. But
He was
We
in
will
our
definitely
March
do that.
Madness bracket where we let people vote on which director we're going to do, and we were expecting that he was going to win, and Zemeckis beat him, which was kind of a surprise.
it's the only time that's
Um,
gonna happen. No, stop.
Exactly.
And I do
Well,
love Zemeckis, but yeah.
We'll do Bong at some point, no question.
Yeah.
What was the thing I was going to say? Oh, out of curiosity, what is Crouching Tiger up to at this point, the
Three-
last weekend of
it-
December?
$6 million. It's got,
And what
you
weekend
know.
was it?
this is its third weekend. It has, and
Wow.
it's going to
And it
make
makes $100 million.
$128 million. So it's
God.
just,
Bananas. These are just there's so many box office performances in this 10 that just don't happen anymore. Castaway
At all.
opening to 20 whatever, and then making more the
Making
next
200
weekend,
plus,
and then
right,
making
yes,
200. Miss Congeniality opening at 5 and ending up at $100 million.
Yep.
I miss when movies had time to breathe.
Yeah, same. Yeah, and really, God, even Titanic made more money every weekend pretty much
Yes.
and it was in theaters for 6 months.
Until frickin' April. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
It's wild.
amazing.
All right. We're done.
Thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Seriously.
I'm so excited. I hope this was good. I hope this was a good episode.
It was
This is a
great.
great episode. Come
it was
back
great.
anytime.
Yes.
I'm starting a podcast actually.
Really?
Which should be hilarious. Yeah, it's so niche. So along with my my love of Korean film, I started watching like Korean dramas when I was like 17. And then like for a couple of years, like stopped around when I was like 19, 20. But then the pandemic started and I was like, oh, I have time for these long ass episodes. And then my friend I was talking to her and we were basically, long story short, we're doing a K-drama watch podcast.
That is awesome.
That's
really
also, find your niche, right? Like that's what podcasts should be. Like
Exactly.
just something that people are obsessed with.
Exactly. It's so
Hyper-specific.
silly, but I'm very excited about it.
That's
Keep your eyes
amazing.
peeled for that. And I very much look forward to seeing Candyman in theaters.
Me too.
Yes,
I mean,
absolutely.
I'm not going to watch it again. I've seen it too many times, but I'm excited for everyone else to see it in theaters.
Has that been,
yeah.
I mean, we need to end the episode, but like, I can't imagine what the last 6 months have felt like for you with that movie, like being so close to coming out and all the ups and downs of that.
Whew, yeah, it's been a crazy year. It's been really insane. But thankfully, like enough people could see it so I can get my next job and, move on with my life at least until it comes out. So it's been good. Yeah.
That's awesome. Look forward to it. Look forward to pestering you into being on the show again. And also pester us to do trivia.
Yeah.
And I want to pester all of our listeners to rate, review, subscribe.
Thank you.
And I want to thank Andrew Guido for our social media, Lane Montgomery for our theme song, Joe Bone and Pet Rounds for our artwork. Go to blankies.reddit.com for some real nerdy shit, and patreon.com. I said patriot.com. Don't go to patriot.com. It's probably terrible. But do go to patreon.com/blankcheck for blank check special features. We're watching the Alien movies, doing commentaries on them. And tune in next week for the Polar Express.
Hey.
Oof, good luck.
All aboard for the weird shit is coming. Here we go.
The weird shit is coming.
Is Beowulf after Polar Express?
Choo-choo.
Then Beowulf.
Correct.
Yep.
And
Then
he does
Christmas Carol with Jim Carrey. It's all kinds of
Oh
stuff.
my God.
He makes a little glassy-eyed Christmas sandwich with a slab of Beowulf in the middle.
Wow.
Yeah, right.
What a
Amazing.
weird
All right.
fucking dude. And as always, for the record, we still just have a fourth window on our Zoom screen that is a Wilson volleyball propped in front of Ben's computer.